Hello, everyone. This is Greg, your host of Goddamn Gamecube, and this is Season 4. Follow Goddamn Gamecube on social for updates on the show, and subscribe to us on YouTube for bonus video content. Thank you, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube. Greg and Riley are your hosts today. Nick the intern is with us as well. And today we are going to be reviewing God of War Ragnarok, one of the biggest releases of the year. And much like Elden Ring, we've got some compliments, we've got some grievances. There's a lot to talk about. So Riley, why don't you start us off and let's do this.
Yes, indeed, gents. Thank you, Nick, for being here. You were not on our previous episode, so if you have any pertinent thoughts about the 2018 God of War, please feel free to chime in. We're going to get right into it here. God of War Ragnarok, if you are somehow unfamiliar, an action-adventure RPG developed by Santa Monica Studios and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment this year, 2022, a month or two ago. Directed by Eric Williams with help from Cory Barlog from last time. Features the Greek god of war Kratos and his son Atreus, now a teenager, who must fight for survival as the Norse prophecy of Ragnarok. It's an apocalyptic event in Norse mythology. Is approaching. All surviving characters from the previous game return. I did want to point out, I'm going to be filling in a couple gaps that because we were covering several games last time. I did forget to mention a couple things. And you get Mimir back in this game, the head guy. And I want to say that another comparison to Hellblade, we were talking about there's some parallels in development and the heads of the teams were kind of like looking back and forth at each other, like Paul McCartney and Brian Wilson a little bit.
Yep.
And but both of these games also have a severed head on your waistband.
Severed head on your waist.
Isn't that nuts?
They both have very different purposes.
Very different purposes. One talks to you, one does not.
You took the joke out of my mouth. I was going to say one of them talks back.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, indeed. And this game takes place, unlike the first game, in all 9 realms of Norse mythology. So getting into right off the bat, how it looks and sounds, I think this game looks really good, even on PS4. And as far as I can remember, every area had a really in-depth level of detail and polish. There is also a lot more enemy and execution variety than last time. Sometimes I felt like a lot of the animations were kind of recycled in 2018. Any enemies or whatever that bosses or stuff like that stood out to you in particular?
Nick, do you have any?
I really like the Drekkie bosses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and because I really like the finishing move on those, where Kratos goes in, and you also have Atreus or Freya, I suppose, help you out with the finishing move there. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yep.
Can I say, while I really liked all the new executions and all that,
it
was really strange how they did recycle the troll one from 2018. It's like they made all these new ones, but the troll one is still the same.
Every now and then you run into the troll again. It's like, there you are.
Well, when it comes to enemies, like there was one thing that I thought there was too much of, which was the tiny little lizard things that jump out of rocks. Like, why were there so many of those?
Quite a few.
Yeah, those were kind of annoying.
You know what I did like, though? There was also, I don't even have it in my notes or anything, but the kind of puzzly ones where you had to get a certain angle and it would kind of give you some rewards, like the crystal lizards and
the little
souls.
lizard guys.
Oh, yeah.
You have to like get the right angle on it, otherwise it would burrow back into the dirt.
Yep.
That was kind of a welcome addition. I mostly enjoyed fighting like the humanoid enemies, but I thought what was really cool was the Phantom, which is like the kind of invisible. It's almost like that Zelda boss that's underwater.
Yep.
Very, very cool looking. A lot of fun to fight.
When that thing popped up in Alfheim, I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yep.
Yeah, it's good shit. The sound design I thought was very dynamic, very complete. A lot of like disgusting monster noises, a lot of great axe scrapes, and whenever you're messing around with the spear, you get that gong.
Yes.
It's so cool. Okay, so maybe a contentious point here.
Oh, no,
what did you think of the voice acting in this game, and how do you feel about the humor / the way people speak in these games in general? An example I wanted to bring up, there is a character you meet maybe like halfway through the game. This guy You meet in Asgard. He's just like a little peasant guy, and within a couple seconds of meeting him, he says the phrase "no shit" twice. So why don't we all kind of go around the room and talk about this sort of tone and the way people speak and everything.
Okay. So we talked about this in a private chat as we were all playing.
Yeah.
And the point that I brought up was Kratos talks in like what, Nick, how did you describe it? Like olden
Very
time,
proper
olden time language.
He doesn't use contractions.
Yeah. Right.
It is the way.
Yeah. And other folks in the game, I sound like Joe Biden. Yeah, like Atreus kind of talks like a modern teenager. Like Odin kind of talks like he's in like a 2022 Netflix drama. And it's I said to you guys, like it was a little odd to me at first how some people in the game speak as if it's a fantasy game and some of them don't. But some of the characters tend to grow on me over time and it starts to bother me less.
Yeah.
Where I actually think for the most part, the voice acting is pretty successful, but I don't want to spoil everything within the first 5 minutes of the show. I'm still not convinced that I like Odin's voice direction, but Nick, you had an interesting point about why they had Odin perform this way.
Yeah, so Odin cannot speak the way Kratos does or the story falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like Atreus has to trust Odin for the story to continue. And he cannot trust someone who sounds exactly like his father, who he is starting to rebel against.
And didn't you also make another point off mic too? You said something how the developers, I don't. It's kind of an assumption, but the developers may have wanted to portray Odin differently because he's been portrayed similarly in a different media.
Yeah, like they want to make a different Odin than, say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something. They want to make him sound a little different, give him his own thing.
Right.
I will say it was a little jarring to hear him speak like that.
Yeah,
because I wasn't expecting the Allfather to sound that way, but it did grow on me.
Well, do you know what it was? I think it was off-putting to me because he shows up so early and just sits down at your kitchen table and just like he's like, "Hey, what the fuck's going on?" And I'm like, "This is really weird."
Well, so
that's not the line.
From
but
what I understand, I haven't seen this show, but I believe he's most known for The West Wing,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming that he speaks completely the same in that show.
Yeah.
And you kind of have this fast talking Beltway, kind of regular, guiding you through Norse mythology here. He's pretty much the main antagonist of the story. So it's kind of what you kind of expect Odin to be a little bit more
godlike,
say,
yeah,
menacing, reserved, more of an old mystic kind of guy, and he's sort of more of just a smooth talker.
Yeah, he's
It's an
kind of
conniving
interesting
bastard
choice.
kind of guy.
Well, he's also kind of I would almost say almost like ironically, he's like smirking the whole time.
Right.
Everything's like kind of, you know what's funny? I'm not going to say his humor is similar to yours, Riley, but kind of.
What are you talking about? I was gonna say you, if anything. Yeah.
Wow. All right, everyone comment what you think, but let's keep going.
Odin is he's just kind of one of the boys. But it's interesting because his reputation in the series is like he lies about everything.
Yeah.
So it's really he's a very sort of comforting almost voice in the beginning at least, and then you kind of see the other side of him. But before we get too far, we're still in the aesthetic zone. All 9 realms are covered in this game. And this is there was only a couple in the previous game. Which one was your favorite to look at? Which one did you think came out the best?
So I thought about this a while. I think I have to give it to Vanaheim because of the crater area you unlock at the very end of the game.
It looks cool, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know, that seems like the one realm that felt just such like a wilderness. There's so much living in it. I really liked just wandering around there, and I thought it was visually striking, especially with the frozen lightning sitting in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Do you and I thought it looked too similar to
What?
like a Monster Hunter zone?
True, it does. Yeah.
It looks too similar.
Some of the creatures are kind of like Monster Hunters too, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
I think I have to say Asgard, right? I think
It looks very cool.
Asgard's cool.
Especially when you show up as Atreus for the first time and you get the wide open, like almost like wetlands, and you see the giant wall.
Yep.
I think it looks the best.
That was pretty striking.
But there isn't much to do in it, but I thought it was the best looking.
Some nice screenshots can come from Asgard.
I did
will
take
say
a few.
that. Yeah.
I was a big fan of Svartalfheim, the dwarf place.
Yep.
I mean, it's one of the first ones you go to, but it's very kind of unique looking. There's a little like World of Warcraft village going on in
true.
there and
Yeah.
stuff with the dwarves.
That's
and,
almost like the atmosphere of that zone, I think.
yeah,
is World of Warcraft.
Very reminiscent to me. A lot of cool sort of gold or brass buildings and stuff. I like the look of it a lot.
And it is entertaining to watch Kratos try and fit through those tiny doors.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Well, something I think they don't do in this game, but it's not necessarily a fault. The worlds really don't feel lived in at all. Like, you don't really interact in people's homes. In the dwarf place, you kind of do.
Well, they all scurry when you get there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I like the crater, because you can kind of see the animal communities coming back as you quest. It felt very lived in to me.
Sure.
Well, I mean, actually, Riley, before you continue, you said something funny. You said everyone kind of scatters when you show up. Atreus comments on that. He says something like, well, Dad, you're as tall as a giant and you act like an asshole.
Yeah.
Like something like that.
Why
Like
would
something-
based on his reputation? Why wouldn't everybody?
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
true.
So, I was just curious. I mean, I liked Alfheim as well, how it looks now with like kind of like a moon sort of surface, a nighttime desert.
Honestly, Greg, you may agree with me on this. We've played so many games where deserts are just abysmal to play through that I cannot go back to Alfheim.
Great, the sand level.
Yeah, right?
but it doesn't look like every other desert.
No, it doesn't.
looks it's very different. But
I mean, you do free the squid-looking things.
The half-a-guffa or whatever?
Then the sky becomes a light with them and the little ones
their
too. And that's
offspring.
very cool.
Yeah, that looks very neat.
Yep.
Okay, so this is sort of dipping into mechanics here a little bit, but still on the side of presentation. Apparently, Alana Pierce was responsible for this, a notable figure in games. This game had a terrific amount of accessibility options. Which ones stood out to you, and which ones did you find yourself using?
I can comment on this first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't use a ton of the accessibility features. I did explore the menu. I may have actually said this in a season 1 episode we did. I believe every game should have button remapping on everything. And
I agree.
No excuses.
That's
I
getting
agree.
more common.
It should be. So I really appreciate that this game, a really big budget game, they've thought to do that. I haven't played too many that allow full button remapping.
And I could be wrong, wasn't one of the button options you can either hold it or mash it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I will say the one that struck me the most, that what I haven't seen before at all, is the motion sickness. accessibility feature.
yeah.
I know a lot of people that affects, where they get so motion sick they can no longer play video games, or it's very difficult for them to do so.
Yeah.
So seeing that, I don't personally need it, but seeing that feature on there, I'm like, maybe these people can enjoy this game now without getting sick. And I think that's a really nice feature to have.
This was pretty much, I mean, we had a whole episode about like video game difficulty and accessibility, and I think this is how you do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the most notable thing for me was a near total amount of HUD customization. So the experience is like as immersive as you want it to be.
Yes.
So I found myself playing with it. Do I want this, or do I miss this pop-up coming up and stuff? I also really appreciate the ability to skip the animation to pick up items.
That was nice.
Which is something that I realized it's like something we've kind of been missing since like N64 days, where it's like you just walk over a pickup and you pick it up. You know, we don't need to interrupt the flow. Like, let's just keep it moving, right? In addition, I wanted to talk about, versus a couple other PS4 titles I've been playing recently, the subtitles have an opaque background.
Yes.
So you can read them clearly without obscuring the rest of the action too much. Sometimes that's like a black or white or red box or whatever. And it's never quite as, I think this was just like a perfect little kind of made it easier to read, which I wish more games had that option. Additionally, both games, I didn't mention this last time, something that's kind of bridging the gap here between the game outright telling you things and integrating it into the story. Atreus and later Freya will call out puzzle hints if it seems to be taking you too long. This is a central object of critique about this game. I think sometimes this happens a little too soon on, like, I was playing on like the normal difficulty level, but I've heard that on higher difficulty levels, they don't do it as much. Did this bother you guys, or what do you think?
Not at
about
all.
this?
I actually like this a lot. Because number one, I said this to you in a off mic, where I said I just like how the hints are in universe.
Yeah.
where your party members tell you what to do or they tell you to look at something. There isn't like a text that pops up on the screen. Remember, you can do this.
Right.
Like, because that kind of takes me out of the game. Well, I think it makes more sense. Like, if there's a lot of immediacy in what your characters are trying to do, yeah, your party's going to tell you, dude, it's over there. Like, they're going to tell you.
We have to stop Ragnarok. Yeah, if you're going to insist on dicking around with puzzles, let's get the cut to the chase here.
Yep.
And it's also, I think, better than another game I'm playing right now where all of those hints are in the character's head or they're saying it out loud, they themselves. Like if somebody else notices something. This is especially, I think, most helpful when I really am not a huge fan of when I like the puzzles in these games a lot, but I don't really like looking for where's that last little whatever so I can unlock the chest. Like where is, like I can't like lock eyes on it. Like at one point in the previous game, Atreus was like, hey, look up there. And I was like, oh, there it is. Thank you. That's it.
Of course.
You know, let's move on. So I think in that game, maybe it was a little bit longer. So I could see people being upset about that, but it's it didn't bother me that much.
Didn't bother me at all.
Well,
either.
let me ask you guys this. Have you ever seen this in a game before where your party members shouted out to you? I have never seen that. Where I've seen a lot of the same stuff over and over. Your character says it to themselves so the player can hear it.
Yeah.
Or the game reminds you of a thing you can do by text on the screen.
Right.
I have never seen a game where like the NPCs you're traveling with shouted out.
You know,
I don't think
off
so.
the top of my head, I can't think of any. I'm sure it's happened before,
Right.
but I do think it's a welcome addition for this
And
series.
you know, and it didn't bother me at all.
No.
Never once when I was playing was like, dude, can I do this myself? No, because it makes more sense that I'd be like, hey, dude,
yeah, right.
hit the fucking statue.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And kind of hand in hand with this, the game will occasionally sort of poke fun at how gamey it is. Kind of trying to like have their cake and eat it too a little bit. Where, like for instance, early on, you're messing around with a water wheel or something, and Atreus says, "Good job getting the wheel to lower exactly where we needed it to." And does it? I mean, so how do you feel about these moments? Are they too gamey? Or are they not? Are you?
So it depends. Nick, I'll let you speak on this next. It really depends. It's kind of subjective. It depends how much fun you're having, because Deadly Premonition 2 does this, and it is one of the worst fucking things ever.
What specifically?
Where like there's that mission, The Lord Hungers, and Francis Ford Morgan says something like, "This is so annoying," and the player, you're like, "Yeah, this quest sucks. It is really annoying and boring, and they shouldn't have this in the game. Why are they making me do this?"
Right.
But in God of War, when someone points out that this puzzle solution that is working out too easily in your favor, I'm having fun playing it, so it doesn't bother me that much.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I think sometimes it kind of suits the character saying it too. One of the reasons I really love Freya's voice acting performance, because whether it's unintentional or intentional, she's very condescending with what she says. Like, I don't know, when she says things like that, it really makes a lot of sense that she would say it. And I really think that her saying, "Sigil arrows won't work on this," is going to be stuck in my head for the foreseeable future.
Well, even when something that when you're running around with Tyr a little bit, and there are some funny moments you can encounter where if you like go off to go get a chest, he says like, "Where is your father going?" And then Atreus is like, "Oh, he likes to be really thorough." Something like that.
He really likes treasure.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like you can't imagine the Kratos of yesteryear really being interested in treasure, or,
right?
Equipment or loot at all. But anyway, we didn't talk, I think, at all about the fast traveling in these games. How do you feel about the warp gates in these?
So I think they're totally functional. I would say I don't have a problem with them inherently. I think they're fine. I have a little bit of a problem with way later in the game when you've Metroidvania'd the hell out of this game and you have all the things that you can use to unlock different parts of the worlds.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed this. So way later in the game, when you're allowed to fully explore the realms, the gates that would have let you explore easier, you can't unlock. So let me explain to you this way. You have to do a ton of backtracking to fully explore the realms because you could not unlock the realm gates the first time you went through them. So it makes them kind of useless.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Where I think inherently they're fine, but by the time you have to use them, the game is not designed for them to be useful.
I feel like if anything, it's mainly to. I felt like sometimes they were kind of lopsided in their placement.
Yeah, sure.
Like there was like a ton in one area and not enough in another.
Yes.
And I think in general, their main sort of utility would be going back for stuff. Like solving puzzles that you couldn't earlier or didn't want to. I think that's kind of their main. I kind of preferred the temple. I was bummed when you didn't get to do that again.
So I think for me, I prefer the temple also, but this one I think narratively works a lot better the way they did it in Ragnarok than if they were to go back to the temple because it's kind of locked off.
Yeah. Because
I think at the beginning it's dangerous to hang around Midgard because Odin's watching.
Yep.
So you kind of have to use Sindri and Brock's MacGyvered solution to Waypoint. And I think it works. The simplicity kind of works because they can't build another Tyr's temple right in their front yard.
Yeah.
No.
So I think it works for me. Tyr's temple is infinitely cooler, but this works narratively.
Do you know what it made me want? It made me want like a Matrix game where you do that with phones, with the pay phones.
Wait a minute. That's kind of sick, actually.
Well, someone edit that into the game where you walk into like a payphone.
I can't believe they haven't done a good Matrix game, and I mean like any Matrix game
That's
in
a
years
good point.
and years.
Yeah.
I just had a thought, but anyway. Crazy amount of weapons, weapon upgrades, mods, armor upgrades and mods, runic attacks, runic buffs, spirit summons, Atreus's bullshit, and the amulet. So a lot of stuff going on in this game, quite a lot. Status effects as well, further fleshed out, feel comparable to Souls in terms of how there's like a couple different elements. The Bifrost thing is like curse, or death in Elden Ring, right? So how do you feel? Do you feel that they went too far with all these systems?
I think they teetered right on the edge of there being too many things.
When I got the amulet, I was like, oh, what the fuck is this? But it turns out to be the last thing,
right. I think they teeter right on the line of there being too many things to keep track of. I think it would have felt less overwhelming if there weren't so many active button presses you had to do to use the things.
Right.
Example, like I can't even remember them all, but you have like all of your weapons have a light attack, a heavy attack. Atreus has a summon. You can also use like an accessory hilt to summon something else, and they all have stat bonuses. And I'm like, okay, I love micromanaging stuff, but I think because they all have a button press in combat, it's a little bit hard to keep track of.
It's also like in terms of micromanaging and stuff, it's not really what I want to be doing in a God of War game. I want to like spend the most amount of time like fucking shit up and exploring and traveling and everything. But personal preferences.
You guys know I love that shit. So customization's great. But I think one change that they made to armor upgrading that I really like is every armor you get is now at least viable for throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
Where in God of War 2018, when you find a suit of armor, it's at a certain level and you can upgrade it 3 times only.
Yeah.
In this game, no matter what level you find the armor, you can upgrade it to max level if you really want to. So if there's a set you really like, you can keep going with it.
Yeah, so every armor set is viable. They all just end up differently.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't mind that. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I did wish, so I mean, it's also cool that at least the one I was wearing, as you upgrade it, it reflects on the like cosmetically.
Yes.
Like there will be like a magic kind of imbuement or whatever. But I kind of did wish that you could apply whatever boons a certain armor set has to a different like look. You
can. You can choose the look of your armor.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
only a
pretty
little.
Cool. It's very, very, you can wear, what you can do is if you're wearing an armor set, you can choose how to make it look like another set you own instead.
That's what I mean. I just missed it then.
Wait,
I found it at the very end of the game.
Okay.
Honestly,
now,
I didn't know it was
did
there.
you guys wear a complete set or did you wear different pieces?
That's a great point. I tried to wear a complete set because this game, Ragnarok, compared to 2018, there were a lot more set bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to wear the full set when possible.
I didn't. I had 3 different pieces.
I mixed and matched.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I'm a sucker for stats.
I know.
I guess.
But, yeah, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot more refined emphasis on puzzle solving this time. One notable thing I liked that there are like fire flowers like Zelda where you pick up the bombs and you can do it that way. I'm like, oh, that looks like Zelda.
You know, I cheered when I found those because it meant I didn't have to do a sigil arrow chain
Yeah.
attack.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I could just throw a bomb at it and it works.
Yeah, you didn't like the sigil stuff?
No.
It's not that I didn't like it. I was just like, I found it hard. Maybe it's me and me like getting old. I don't know. My depth perception for seeing how far the chain, the Blades of Chaos could actually reach to hit the first one. I could never really master that. I don't know.
I like the idea of it a lot.
I do too.
But in terms of execution, I felt like it could have been a little bit more.
It's just not accurate enough because you can derp it too much.
Yeah, and I didn't know until later that you can make the bubbles bigger.
That took me hours to
Yeah.
figure out that not only can you have 3 of them, you can also make them 3 times as big.
That would have
Some
made it
of
very
them.
hard to not know that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can see why you didn't like it.
No, I just think it also happens a bit too much where you have to use it.
I'm glad later on in the game they kind of like go away from it
Taper
for
off.
a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a cool way to like, oh, how am I gonna get this? So it's cool to like think a little bit more than not at all. It was just in terms of like knowing when you could execute them.
I like the
properly.
concept. You know,
Yeah.
it's very different. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah. And so also I felt like they gave you pretty good reasons to continue to switch between all 3 of your major weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Which weapon was your favorite?
I'm actually I tended to use the Blades of Chaos a lot.
Oh, really?
I didn't use the spear a lot in combat, only in very specific situations.
Interesting.
I don't know if you guys did this. Whenever I encounter a boss I thought was tough, I would put on a weapon, use both skills, switch the weapon, use both
Yep.
skills, switch the weapon, use both skills, then switch to the weapon I wanted to hack away.
Yeah.
I did that too, to an extent. For me, this is just me and like my progression throughout the game. My Blades of Chaos and Dropnir Spear were always one level above the axe. Maybe I missed an upgrade earlier on or something. So I
Frozen
tended
Flame or whatever.
so I tended to focus on Blades of Chaos or the Spear. I actually did use this, like if I was just randomly attacking, depending on the enemy or maybe if it's a boss, I actually used the Spear a lot. I'm not
Really?
sure. I really liked its moveset.
I mean, I capped out all 3.
I did,
Yeah.
I did as well, but I did like the Spear a lot.
The spear was my favorite. The thing fucks. It's like
And Kratos with the Spear, it's pretty sick. I mean,
Can we
It's-
bring up a funny moment about the spear that we
Yeah.
talked about in the chat?
Yeah.
Or when you get the spear, Kratos says, "This is the first weapon a Spartan learns," but I don't believe you use a spear in any other God of War game,
I don't think so. If
I
you
don't
do, I
recall.
forget.
which is really humorous.
right?
No, I thought that was so. We kind of kept it close to the chest because the blades was a story moment last time. I think we can talk about the spear right now. And something that I thought was awesome about it is it's kind of like, well, we need a weapon for to defeat this god or whatever. And what winds up happening is they make it out of. It's like that Harry Potter thing with the multiplying object, the
Yes.
infinitely multiplying object, and it's a ring in like Sindri's basement, and they make it out of that, and it's kind of a I'm not really sure how you would say this, where it's an in-story version of why you can have infinite spears.
Yes.
because you can just constantly multiply it. I thought it was a lot of fun.
I think it's cool how it's not worn on your back. Like it's a
Yeah.
ring you wear and then it goes into your hand.
You know,
Yep.
I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, you only have 2 upgradable weapons before you get the spears. I'm like, okay, there's probably going to be a third one, but having 3 weapons on Kratos' back would probably look a little silly. So I wonder how they're going to do it. And I think the ring is perfect.
Pretty
You guys
cool.
want to hear something kind of funny
Yeah.
about the spear? You know how you mentioned you have to use it to beat a specific boss?
Yeah.
So what's really funny, you can't use the same method to defeat those little lizard guys. So like the little guys that disappear if you get
Yeah.
too close.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
can't like throw the spear and make it explode to kill the lizard. So really the lizard is stronger than the god because they can see that coming.
which is really
Which
funny.
is kind of funny. Maybe an oversight on their part.
Little
That's
oversight.
crazy.
Yeah.
I heard apparently our friend Kyle was telling me that people thought you were going to get Thor's hammer. Which would have been interesting, but I mean, it's kind of similar to the axe in function.
It's too
So I'm-
similar.
I'm glad they went in a different direction ultimately.
Right.
So a couple other little puzzle things. I like the Twilight Stones where you can ricochet your axe. That felt very like in line with Zelda or something like that.
Are those the axe mirrors?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, pretty cool. And as well, the Blades of Chaos. Pretty much instantly, you're doing the thing you used to do in 1 through 3, where you're grappling around with them.
Yep.
Using that. That's pretty fresh. Kind of makes it a little bit more vertical, I guess. So pulling objects. And I'm not sure if you guys found this, there's a boon that you can add to them, which will make it deflect ranged attacks when you spin them.
I like that one.
Very cool animation there. And as well, the spear can be used to form pole vaults and detonate vulnerable structures. And it's like one of those things where it's like, well, I don't have that fucking item yet. It's driving me fucking crazy that I see all these little vents and I don't know what to do with them. But
you know what I found was really good about the spear too is taking out Odin's ravens. Like when they're far away, especially when they're a moving target, throwing the axe at those can be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But being able to just huck spears at them until you hit them made that a lot faster.
Absolutely. And that's another thing we didn't even mention. I mean, so that's they kind of appear very similar to Hollow Knight with the caterpillars that you save. They appear all on a tree once you break them, and they give you bonuses and whatnot. And as far as weapons and stuff go, there is now more than one option for your type of shield after Thor breaks your first one. So which one of these did you wind up using?
Oh, the parry shield onslaught, right? Is that the parry shield?
The
little one.
Oh, that's the Dauntless shield.
That's Dauntless. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yep.
I use the Onslaught shield because you can interrupt people who have like the blue aura thing going on.
Is that the one where you charge them?
That's the shield charge.
I use
so
that
like
most
that
often.
Really?
But I like the parry
I
shield
used the
also.
parry shield the whole game.
Really?
I felt I just needed to close the gap quicker with the onslaught. Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys noticed, is with the parry shield, it does protrude faster.
Yes, it
so
does.
if you
It's
have
true.
a quick enough turnaround time, you can do it within a couple of milliseconds.
That's
Yeah.
why I like the shield system they implemented here. There's no real right answer for what's good. I use
Right,
the parry
because
shield
you
for
can
a
upgrade
while.
them all fully.
Yes.
No, I used the parry shield the entire time. Is that Dauntless? You said?
I
Is
believe
that
that's a Dauntless shield. It's a good. I used that a lot until I got Onslaught.
And there's that there's the one with that's like the tower shield. It's like really big. I didn't wind up using it, but
And they all give different stats too and upgraded,
Yep.
so it's pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, I think that's cool that they did something different with the shield to give you some options.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, you guys have anything to add before we get into the story?
You know what's kind of funny? We mentioned the runic attacks. Something I kind of noticed because it kind of actually made me mad. I got like 12 hours into the game before finding a heavy runic attack. And I'm like, what is going on here? There are actually less runic attacks in this game than 2018.
That's what I figure.
Yeah, and I'm just
I didn't
like-
see one for a while.
Right. And so I did some quick math here. In the first game, there's 31 of them across 2 weapons. And in Ragnarok, there's 28 of them across 3 weapons.
Oh,
Which I thought was
interesting.
interesting.
It's got to be a balance
They
measure.
took a few out to,
Yeah.
which I don't hate that. I thought it was interesting.
You know what move I did miss in this game, where in the previous one you could throw the axe, and if you timed it right, the next attack would be extra powerful. They didn't have that in this, where the axe like shines.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
they didn't
the
do that.
Gears of War active reload.
right,
But
I didn't notice
I
that.
did miss that. But other than that, I thought there was a good amount of variety. So yeah, ready for
Yeah.
a little story?
Yep,
do it.
let's do it.
It's a very narrative heavy game, so we're gonna have a lot to get into. Okay, so right at the beginning, starts out in a little cave, and something I thought was instantly remarkable was Atreus' silhouette carrying the deer. It makes it look like he has antlers, and so it's kind of reminiscent of like the Marvel Loki with the reindeer helmet. Nothing really comes of this, but I was like, oh, that's an interesting. Like that's the first time you see him as he's coming through the snowstorm,
that. Okay.
looking like that. Funny and kind of a relief that it starts out with Freya trying to get her revenge. I'm like, let's get this plot line resolved.
Yeah, right.
Let's get it done. I actually forgot to mention last time that like when Kratos kills her son, who's Balder, as the final boss of the previous game, he's actually like strangling her. And
Yep.
It's just like that makes it even more ridiculous. Like
Right.
he was trying to kill you.
Right.
Like I don't know. I know it's her son, but this whole thing, like her being this mad, just didn't really connect with me. I don't know. But,
No, it didn't connect with me either. We'll get into it, but it didn't connect
Yeah.
with me either.
yeah. And there was some good plant and payoff where in the previous game you had the arrowhead, which very briefly features in this game, but when she sees that Sindri gave you that magic arrowhead, she's like, hide this, don't use it. And it's
Yes.
like obviously that's what's gonna kill him.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so you kind of throw her off there. It's like that husky. You know, you got your
Yes.
wolves.
That's right.
A little escape sequence there. The first kind of boss battle is Kratos fighting a giant bear, which turns out to be Atreus, who's having like an episode. It's interesting that he grows in this way. Kratos and Atreus' relationship, a little bit more of a partnership in this game. And I found an early noteworthy moment where Kratos suggests he doesn't believe his sort of grueling Spartan training was necessary. And Loki's like, well, you're always training me. And it's like, but it sounds like your training was worse. And he says, why didn't you train me like that? And he's like, it wasn't necessary.
It's fucking awful. I don't need that.
Yeah.
You know what's something kind of cool about the bear fight too? I only noticed this because I finished 2018 right before starting Ragnarok. In 2018, when Kratos tells Atreus that he's a god, Atreus kind of says like a childlike offhand remark, like, "Ooh, I'm a god. Can I turn into an animal?"
Right.
And Kratos kind of brushes it off, like, "Okay."
He says like, I don't know.
Yeah, like, shut up, kid. It's whatever. And then, well, here we go. He can turn into an animal.
Yeah. So that's crazy. So he's kind of going through some growing pains here. I thought this was a pretty cool moment of subversion where you kind of you get the payoff to the Thor dream from the first game, where he finally shows up outside Kratos' house. It's kind of, especially compared to the way Baldur showed up, it's like initially like, oh, okay, so they're not gonna fight right away. Yeah. They're gonna have a little talk. Thor and Kratos and soon to be after Odin shows up, and they're basically like, all right, we're gonna give you like this one chance to just kind of, not make waves, not pick up your axe against us, as it were. And obviously it does not go super well. And I thought this was a pretty intense boss battle with Thor. I thought that it was a very, what did you guys think? Very emotionally charged, right?
Now, was this on purpose where like you get a fake game over screen and he like zapped and you get like your heart resuscitated by Thor's hammer?
Fission meld MGS2 moment. I mean, it wasn't like amazing because I've seen it like that between that and I think Batman did it as well.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like oh, it's like a funny moment.
Yeah. The way I thought about that was like, it's kind of weird because Thor says something like, no, I say when this is over, or something like that. Like, even if he unintentionally killed Kratos, he was going to bring him back. I think that's narratively because they need Atreus to trust them. Yeah. Because if he literally kills Kratos right now, Atreus is not going to trust them.
Do you know what's kind of, I don't know if this is just like a me problem, but do you know what kind of bothered me kind of about this game right off the bat? If Odin and Thor can show up at your house whenever, like, doesn't that strike you guys as kind of strange? They could come fuck you up at any point. They choose to like you kind of say no to the stalemate, or you aren't very kind to them. Couldn't they just come back and like fucking fuck you up at any point? But they don't.
Well, that's why they went to Sindri's house, right?
Right?
I think that's why. Yeah. Kratos is like, we're staying here. Yeah. And Sindri's like, no, you moron, we're going here.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for that reason.
You know what I mean, though? Isn't there a little? I don't know what the right narrative word for that is. I feel like Odin and Thor could go anywhere at any time, but just don't.
I guess they did have a lot of time between when 2018 ended and when this game began where they could have shown up.
It's been a couple years, right?
Yeah.
Is that but I think what winds up kind of triggering the event is that Atreus has been looking for Tyr, who he believes is still alive. So that kind of sets Odin off. He's like, he shows up at the house and Kratos does not know that Atreus has been sneaking off.
That's right.
Right.
That's kind of, it starts to build some contention there. You get rescued by Brock and Sindri, your dwarf friends. Did mention it last time, but it's kind of nice that you actually sort of put them together in the first game. Like they're kind of on the outs, and then they gradually have that bond that gets rekindled by helping you.
I love those guys, man. They're the best.
Those are the guys.
Our boys. Yep. And remember I was talking about how Brock's skin is blue?
Yeah.
The whole thing. There's a very funny moment in the first game where Atreus asks why Brock is blue, and Kratos goes, "Boy!" And yes, okay, so on one level it's funny, but it's also like it works in the story because Kratos is like bleach white. So perhaps like he's like, maybe there's like he's trying to say to Atreus, there may be a tragic reason why his skin is a different color.
Why I have red paint all the way down my fucking face.
Right. Exactly. So the search for Tyr kind of kicks off the plot. You go to the dwarf Svartalheim, as we mentioned earlier. I liked the way this level was designed. I thought it was pretty cool how all the little shortcuts. It was
very recursive, right? That's the word we
recursive,
use.
as we
Yeah.
say. A lot of interest. I felt like in this game in general, I was consistently, whereas a lot of open world games, it's like you turn around and you just kind of see the same thing again. I felt like I was consistently reasonably surprised.
Yeah.
Like there's this whole side quest, completely optional, where Mimir says, I was involved in, I imprisoned this person or whatever years and years ago, and please do me a solid and free him. And it turns out to be that giant whale.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's
Right.
fucking
Right.
awesome, right?
Yep.
Those kinds of like genuine surprise moments, showing you something you haven't seen already.
I agree. Very strong starting area as far as the time was.
Very cool. Something I did want to bring up before we get too far. Certain story beats I felt like probably should have played out with more reverence or significance. In particular, in this early part of the game, you find out, like, so you find Tyr in a prison cell, and he starts running around with you. And, he was the original Norse god of war. You believed him dead in the previous game. And he, as you're running around, he mentions, like, offhandedly that he has taken a vow of pacifism, right? And I thought that really should have been a bigger deal. It's just kind of like one of those comments while you're running through, escaping
Sure.
from Svartalfheim. Like, oh yeah, I by the way, and it's just like, okay. And then another thing is, in the subsequent sequence, Atreus is hanging out with Sindri, and Sindri offhandedly mentions that Brock died in a accident and Sindri resurrected him, right? And this is happening just as you're on your way to whatever objective. And I guess,
Well,
yes,
that happened a lot in this game.
yes, and it would happen like sometimes things come up while you're talking and moving in real life, right?
Yep.
Sure.
But in terms of the way that the story played out, I felt like that should have been gone about a different way.
I think we'll talk about it when we get to it, but I had that same issue with a lot of Freya conversations. You talk about a lot of heavy shit when you're just platforming around. It's like really strange.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I disagree. It's just like it does make platforming around a little more interesting, where you're not just running around to complete
It does
silence.
make it more digestible, but it
does.
feels odd.
It's a tough way, right? They had to make a decision here. They said,
Right.
do we stuff all of this into another cutscene?
Yes.
Or do we make them say it as the characters
It's
walk
like, yeah,
around?
do we break up the gameplay and have another cinematic?
I think some people are going to like it if you put it in a cinematic. Some people are going to like it this way, kind of
I
thing.
think even that, or maybe just discovering it, like the best. I mean, so movies have that show don't tell rule, and games, I feel like in general should. I feel like a lot of these cinematic PS4 games are breaking this. I think games should have a feel, don't tell.
Yeah.
Where you experience these, maybe Tyr is not helping out in combat, and it's like, what the fuck, and
Yeah.
it's
And maybe someone could have brought it up, be like, bro, why are you not doing anything? And
Yeah.
then it comes up in conversation that he's taking a vow of
How the
pacifism.
fuck is
or
this guy
something.
going to help us? Yeah, I don't know. They kind of do it, but I just felt like it could have been done better.
I get what you mean. Yeah. I get it.
Okay, so speaking of Atreus, how did you feel about playing as him?
Oh, boy.
I was surprised. Okay, I'll start.
Mhm.
I was surprised when they let you control him. I actually didn't think that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a hot take to say I kind of liked it? Did people not like it?
I think I mostly liked it too. There are some certain sections I'm sure we'll talk about.
There were some
but
sections that we'll call nap time moments.
Yeah,
I think I generally liked the change of pace when playing with Atreus, because like even though he has the same button moves and combos, whatever, as Kratos, like his melee attacks are not as strong. You should be relying on ranged. His quote unquote execution abilities don't really kill anything.
Yep.
And of course, you unlock his Spartan Rage ability, which is pretty neat.
it's the wolf,
The wolf
right?
form, which I think is pretty cool.
The
So-
Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I welcome almost any variation in these sort of action
Yeah.
games. I was
Yeah.
at least surprised.
Yeah.
When you take I was surprised you take control of him and it's not a walking simulator.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
actually have to do stuff.
I liked it, I think, for the most part. I think there's a one really comical moment where you find the first treasure chest. He tries to punch it open like Kratos,
He can't.
but he can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought it was fun and different. Maybe didn't pay off as much as it could have. I like that his skill tree looks different when you're playing as Kratos. Like it has basically the same kind of moves, but it's from a different sort of perspective. Like here's what he can do to help you versus here's what you can do.
Yes,
You know,
I like
kind
that
of
as
thing.
well.
He kind of uses his bow as a melee weapon, which is interesting. And I like that. I don't know. It was the shooting arrows was a lot smoother than I expected it to be.
And it made taking down those nightmare enemies a lot easier than throwing the axe at them, in my opinion.
Yeah. That was a lot more fluid. So you essentially you're exploring Midgard here, try to make peace with Freya. She basically steals the arrowhead that you used to kill Balder and tells you to fuck off.
Pretty much.
It doesn't really work out for him. So you go back to Sindri's house and wind up heading to Alfheim with Tyr. I mentioned this. I think it's at least cool that the world looks different than it did in the previous game.
Yes.
Wait, is this the funny moment where you, as Atreus, you try to walk back through the?
Oh, not quite yet.
Is that it? Is that later?
A little bit later. I know what you're talking about. I can't wait for that.
So essentially, this is the light elves and dark elves.
Yep.
Like they're constantly at war. The light elves are in power now, and it's ironic that everything is much darker.
Yes.
Right. That's very cool. Mm-hmm. I like the way they fight in contrast to the dark elves. Mm-hmm. They have kind of katanas and stuff.
Yeah, like dual wielding.
Very, very unique kind of looking stuff. There's, I think later on, I don't know if you guys messed around with this boss. There's the librarian.
Dude, that boss actually killed me a few times.
It's a tough one. It's like a high level light elf that's guarding like a library there. You find it out in the desert. And once you defeat her, that she just puts down her swords or whatever. It's like you passed the test.
Yeah,
right.
Very, very cool, unique encounter there. Something that I thought was really dumb, though, I need to get off my chest. So you basically, this is where you take Tyr back to show him one of the giant prophecies. The giants of Jotunheim have a prophecy about Ragnarok, how it's going to play out differently. Tyr sees it for the first time, is feeling very conflicted. Once you're done with this, you have the option to explore this big, wide open desert, right? What I found really dumb about this is you basically have an alternate version of your bobsled with your huskies, but they're like the Varen from Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting there, and it's just I wonder who left these here. Probably, I don't know.
The game devs.
Right. And it was just couldn't we just get the ones from the other world or something? It's just very game. You're playing a game.
You know what I kind of wish? I'm glad they're there because I think traversing the desert without them would be kind of a slog. But we'll get to Freyr later. But they say that Freyr was revered among Alfheim.
Right.
I was hoping that maybe Freyr would say at one point, "Oh, hey, did you happen to see my dogs out there?" Yeah, I don't know, maybe something like that.
I got really drunk and I left them. Yeah. So that's kind of silly, but
yeah, I thought so too.
Atreus's dreams transport him back to Jotunheim, which now looks like the mushroom planet from Halo 5 Guardians.
Yep. He
meets
or from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. But keep going.
Good call out. I like that.
Miasma. So he meets this young girl who he is apparently smitten with, named Angerboda. She paints these prophetic murals, takes care of soulless animals, and lives in fear of her enormous grandmother.
That phrase is so funny.
So
this part is mainly nap time, right?
Almost entirely.
Yeah.
So so I'm sure it is very popular to hate this sequence. I will explain why it was probably the lowest point for me. Right?
I'd agree.
It's down there.
It's definitely down there. So let me just try to. I'm gonna go first, and then you guys can talk. Okay?
Yeah. So
initially, nice change of pace, right? This is cool. It's going back here without Kratos. You're seeing a different side of Jotunheim. It wears out its welcome within 20-30 minutes
or less
less. The point of frustration, the first point of frustration here, Angerboda is very slow to provide details about what's happening. Atreus is how did I get here? What are we doing here? She's well, I can't tell you yet. Why? Stop wasting my time.
Yeah.
It just goes on and goes on.
It's only you and I here.
Except there's no one's listening. Odin can't find us here. You know what I mean? You're currently finding out, what's going on with the giants, their current plight. How they have maybe survived the Thor's slaughter, right? When Atreus is with Sindri or Kratos and Mimir or Brock or whoever, you're either getting steady lore or characterization, or at least you're getting some humorous banter. That I think that is the contrast for me, where you're spending, not that she's not like a good character or anything, but she isn't very funny, and she doesn't provide a lot of information right off the bat, right? Moreover, when you start the chapter, you really have no idea how long you're going to be there. I'm thinking, okay, that we're going to be here. This is like a contrast section. We're going to be here for 20, 30 minutes and then get back to the action.
Yep.
It is much longer than that. The characters will frequently mention how they should be wrapping things up and getting Atreus home, only to divert into something else. Like, oh, I need help with XYZ to keep you in Jotunheim longer. This essentially, like, the way it breaks down is you ride this slow moving yak through a swamp, and then you have to fight off like a couple Draugr and then like rinse and repeat. Like it's very, you start to see the code a little bit. Like, okay, I see how they designed this. The main points of story development here are that the giants have hidden themselves in the little marbles from Men in Black.
Yep. Nice.
Nice. That, you know what I'm talking about? Those little things. And Atreus finally witnesses the prophecy of Kratos' death, air quotes, as well as himself serving Odin. And this is kind of when he, I believe, the first time he transforms into the wolf, right? There's a boss battle here involving the grandmother. It's like this Hansel and Gretel kind of situation here.
Almost like a Little Nightmares kind of situation, honestly.
That's true. Yeah.
It means nothing to me. Atreus releases one of the giant's souls into a big stick, because the grandmother has been draining their souls, right?
The souls of the animals.
Yes.
Yep.
And Atreus releases one of the giant's souls into a snake. And they defeat the grandmother, and they race back to the start in Atreus's wolf form, and Angerboda rides this thing from like Avatar: The Last Airbender. So this is I can see people getting really mad at this. I'm not really mad at this, but in terms of, this is one of those points in the game where I felt like they were just straying just a little too far from the ideal God of War tone. Like, you think about how fucking heavy duty like everything has been until this is like, and this is kind of the point where you get the pros talking squirrel as well.
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine this being in one of the first couple games? Because I cannot. It's like, it's
crazy.
Do
you think they got a little bit too close to the walking through the museum in The Last of Us kind of thing in this section, where there's too much walking and doing nothing, and why are we here? Like, do you think like even though I did not dislike the giant grandmother part, do you think maybe that should have been the main plot point, where, I don't know, what's this girl's name again?
Angerboda?
Do you think maybe she should have mentioned that she's scared of this thing, and maybe this grandmother is has some sort of presence the whole time? It just kind of comes up after.
They kind of did that, but you really don't get, I mean, it's the problem for me is it doesn't feel like, the tone is very light and fun, whereas I feel like it should have been kind of creeping up on you, like, oh, there's this presence.
Well, okay, let me say, I agree with you. My least favorite part about this was the game's objective is you need to do giant stuff. I'm serious. That's what it says on the screen. It says you have to do giant stuff.
See, I blocked it all out.
Well, okay, I don't actually hate that, because that's how Angerboda describes it.
Yeah, but it's also, but they wrote her to say that, and it's like, it's very like, oh, we did a thing, like. Well,
you know what though?
Very modern writing.
Maybe I'm asking for too much. I almost thought we were gonna get a Majora's Mask on the Moon moment.
Oh yeah. That
where awesome. Where everything is too nice.
Yeah,
and you're like, but maybe I was like, where's the creepy thing?
Oh
like,
no, I thought you meant when in Majora's Mask, when you put the mask on, you turn gigantic.
No. I thought when we're not going to go on a Majora's Mask rant here. I thought, in Majora's Mask, when you go to the moon and the kids are playing on the grass, and you walk up to the tree, and then everything gets shattered and
they
fucked
all
up.
look like the Happy Mask salesman.
Yes, I thought what was going to happen was this giant land is a facade or something where, it's cute, but why is it so cute? Like, I'm a little creeped out, but they don't really do that.
It's just cute.
It just is.
I was kind of waiting for that moment too. I think How I really describe this part is, you know, they like you go to work every day and you think you come after a meeting and say that meeting could have been an email. That's what I think about this scene. I don't know. They could have just done this in like 20 minutes.
It's one of those, you know, when you're watching a TV show and you get that contrast episode.
Yeah.
It suits a 20, 30 minute, you know, TV episode rather than a feature length comedy. Because for me, I think this was like 90 minutes, right?
Yeah. This is what really made this scene really bad for me. I got like a fear in me whenever I saw Angerboda again. And the like, no, is she going to drag me away for 2 hours
again?
You
have that negative association with the character now.
Because I think for me, I started playing this section like mid-morning, 10, 11 in the morning, right? And I said, okay, after I finish this section, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to do some errands. I didn't do my errands till 2 freaking p.m. I was really mad that it took so long.
I haven't fallen asleep playing a video game in probably 10 years.
Oh, you fell asleep at this
It was like 2 a.m. And keep in mind, I kind of like this game too, for all of you out there.
Yes.
When I was playing this section and I started nodding off when this yak is just kind of trotting through the swamp, I'm like, I think we just have to be done for the night. I just don't think I can do this right now.
It's very, very meditative.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I also don't, we'll talk about it more later, but I don't think the inclusion of this sequence ever really paid off.
I thought we were going to get more with the grandmother later on,
Yeah.
honestly. Because I thought the grandmother fight and the story behind it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we really don't get much until
we'll get to it at the end, but there's a lot of unresolved plot points in this game.
Yes. Okay. So
we'll keep rolling.
At this point, Atreus sort of Wizard of Oz's himself back to their cabin. You know, there's no place like home kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he winds up at the Midgard cabin instead of Sindri's house, right? And I thought this part was actually really cool, at least initially, where the whole zone has kind of been overrun by like White Walkers or whatever. Like really, because I love it when I have a very I find it so interesting when places that used to be safe are no longer safe.
Yeah.
Like the room in Silent Hill 4.
Yep.
You know, but we've talked that game to death. But no, it was pretty cool, and he's about to walk back into the warp gate, and then what happens, Nick?
Fucking Kratos just comes through. It's like, boy, what's going on?
Dude, that was like one of the best, like, hilarious jump scares in the game. You think
so
you're just going to warp back through the door, but when you try to walk through, Kratos walks through it instead. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble.
So funny.
It's like being splashed with ice water.
Right.
Yeah.
It made the whole part kind of worth it just to see that one moment.
Almost.
Almost worth it. Yeah.
No, that was good.
It's like, yo, you haven't cleaned up after the party yet, and Dad walks in the door,
Yes.
right?
Guys like donuts. Oh shit. This part was cool where you kind of you get back the team back together a little bit. And there's like a boss battle here with a Valkyrie who turns out to be Freya,
Yes.
right? And so this sort of this culminates in sort of a tenuous alliance with her, where it's like, all right, let's cool it off here. You know, Brock kind of brokers a little bit of a peace here. And everybody kind of like, for the moment at least, goes their separate ways to just kind of, you know, like, all right, let's cool off. Let's get back to business here, right? So you wind up going to Vanaheim here with Freya and Brock. And Brock occasionally helps you out in combat here. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you thought of all like the companions that you hang out with in this game?
Do you mean combat-wise, or?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all the same, right? Where they either shoot thing, throw thing, right? Or right? Am I wrong?
You're pretty accurate. I think there's some special moves that aren't shooting, but I think for the most part, they all act as a quote unquote archer companion.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I think I like that because I didn't. One thing I worried about, you know, I think the game does really tip you off. There's going to be multiple companions because the resurrection stones say your companion will resurrect you. So that kind of tipped me off that you might get more than one. But I liked how maybe like Atreus and Freya really operated very similarly. And then Brock or Sindri, you couldn't level up their skills, which I thought was a good thing.
Yeah, because they teetered right on the line of having too many things.
Yeah, I think, yes, it makes the, I mean, because I think it was definitely the right move to split up Kratos and Atreus at certain points in this game, but it kind of gets to that point where it's like the Gears of War problem where it's always Marcus and Dom, and then when you got to split up the guys, like you introduce these tertiary characters, not only the dwarves but also the sword later on is sort of a companion.
Yes.
Yeah,
Forgot about Ingrid.
so I don't know, kind of an interesting choice. here you meet Freya's brother Freyr, and the Brotherhood without banners, essentially. You know, kind of a merry band of Robin Hood sort of people who are uniting against Odin. Some I think, for the most part, some nice development of the Freya Kratos relationship here, where he confides his past and
while platforming,
yes. And they work together to kill a sort of giant worm, like the dragon context of worm.
Yes.
That can attack you through portals. I thought this boss fight was awesome.
This was a great boss fight, actually. I really liked it.
Very cool. A lot of very cool. No, very inventive. Where it's kind of popping out at you from different angles. And
yes.
People apparently hated this boss.
Wait, really? I thought it was pretty cool.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Don't go on Reddit for anything but pain. Okay.
What the fuck do I know?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
cool.
So she, I think her big thing is that she has had a hex on her from Odin, who has forbade her from traveling through the realms, and she winds up cutting this knot here that allows her to freely travel.
Wasn't it like her marriage vow or something? Or isn't that what's binding her there?
I think that's later, right?
So yeah, I think it's because that she ended the marriage, and Odin's like, okay, well, you can't leave Midgard.
Right. It has something to do with her.
Something to do with her marriage to
marital,
Odin. Yes,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
but there is a optional side quest where you kind of go back to where they got married.
Yeah.
And she is
And it kind of
destroying
wraps it all
those.
up.
Yeah, I thought that. I mean, it was a very because the character didn't really work for me that well last time, and this time it did. I think she was a lot more relatable once you got to know her more and you got to see her past, and the part where she can't destroy that sword. She has to accept that was part of her past and pull it out, and then she can use both the swords. I'm like, fuck yeah,
let's go.
fuck yeah. All right. So yeah, I like the sequence. When they get back to Sindri's house, which is kind of your home base. You get one boy too many here, where Kratos, because I really thought that this game they were going to give into memes and have him say boy all the time.
Yeah, they didn't.
And thank
really.
God they didn't, because that's kind of like the growth of the character, where he respects him a little bit more. But he calls him boy here, and that's what sets him off. Because he's like, oh, why didn't I go to Asgard and I can spy on Odin and everything? And of course, no one's happy with that. It's a terrible plan. And so Atreus fucks off here. He goes back to Midgard, and he hangs out with Charlie the turtle. The guy he's very snowed in. It's wintertime in Midgard, and he lights a little fire underneath him and keeps
Honestly,
him
what the
warm.
fuck, Freya? How do you forget about your turtle buddy?
Oh my God.
How do you do that?
How do you forget about your turtle pal?
Consumed by vengeance.
I hated that.
Terrible.
Dude, a lot of good turtle pals this year in games, at least.
Oh, agreed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big year for turtles in gaming.
Big year for turtles.
Here, do you know the story of why he's called Charlie?
No,
No.
actually.
So apparently when God of War 2018 was first announced, there was I don't know how it happened, but some site got wind of the fact that Kratos has a son, and they thought his name was Charlie.
Wait, like a regular US spelling of
Yes.
Charlie?
Kratos and his son Charlie. It must have been they misheard something, but then the developers made that turtle Charlie as
That's
a joke.
really funny, actually.
So it's very cute.
I love that.
But no, yeah. So you wind up accepting Odin's invitation as Atreus. I thought this every time you traveled this way was really cool with the ravens circling you, and they warp you to Asgard. So appropriately, I do think it's very different from how it appears in the Thor movies, but I thought it was really cool how it was sort of. You talked a little bit about it before. It's very humble almost. It's not as grandiose, epic, as lavish as you might expect.
No, it just kind of goes dark, and then you're.
It kind of looks like Skyrim.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, you know what?
Exactly.
When you meet, what is the kid's name who tells you to go up the wall? That random villager.
Oh shoot! Yeah.
No, do you think?
I hate that guy.
Wait, whoa! Hold on. No, I understand.
No shit.
Wait. I have a point I'm making.
What?
Okay. Yeah.
Is he Link from Breath of the Wild? Because
what?
isn't his name Shield in if you doesn't his name translate to Shield, and isn't he wearing Link's outfit?
Wait, really?
Am I wrong?
What does Shield
this a
have to do
reference?
with
I'm
it?
just because you can shield slide in Breath of the Wild.
What?
I think he's wearing Link's outfit. But anyway, well,
What?
that's a little.
Is he a joke? Is that the point?
I think it might be a meme.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I'm
that
serious.
gives him a little more context because I'm not really. I forgot all about that. Link had a new outfit in that game and everything.
Interesting.
But,
Wow, I'm gonna be thinking about that
yeah.
for a while now.
But he's like, the gods live on the other side of the wall, and I mean, I think this is a cool concept, but this is kind of one of those things. This is less of a problem and more of a missed opportunity, I would say. That like most of the climbing sequences of this game, they're very on rails, right?
Mhm.
They're all like that kind of Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed. Every point is magnetized and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I felt like this was maybe an opportunity where Atreus would be truly tested.
Right.
Like almost
It's not on rails.
almost what they make a big deal about how the wall separates, the refugees from the gods, right? And I felt like it should have been more of maybe like a Sen's Fortress kind of thing, like sort of there's some puzzles, there's some interesting things here and there, but it's pretty
not.
easy,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, also, it's not a problem, but it kind of becomes a problem here. They're trying to like almost display to you the difference between like the rich and the poor, but these worlds don't feel lived in, so it doesn't really matter.
It feels very small, like very.
You know what I mean?
Sounds
Like
very small.
they making a point where like, oh, the gods live on the other side of the wall. We live here,
but the other side of the wall doesn't look that different.
no, and also like this is just not the kind of game where you have NPC interactions. There's no quest building really.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you never really feel that contrast. Everything is just an object.
Yeah,
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Can I say though, I don't
Yeah.
mind the wall being on rails because I feel like if it was more than that and you could like fall and like get a game over, I would have been really mad.
Oh, well,
that would have been annoying, but it would have been annoying if you lost progress.
Yeah.
but I think it should have felt a little bit more. Like I was like lying in bed, like fucking half asleep. While
Sure,
I was doing
yeah,
it.
I get
I
that.
felt like I should have been a little bit more
I get that.
engaged.
Nick,
I
the
get it.
platforming was hard enough in God of War 1.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
You
Fair
literally
enough.
had to climb a wall in hell that was they broke my balls, man. I fucking drove me crazy. Anyway, keep
All right.
going.
Well, okay. So at the top, you meet Heimdall.
This part was kind of sick, actually.
He's appropriate. I mean, he's very different from the Thor version, the Idris Elba person. He's a very annoying.
He's kind of like an annoying Draco Malfoy.
Actually, kind of, yeah. Very similar.
yeah. He presents a significant obstacle because he can see the future. So you have a little mini boss encounter with him, and he can dodge your every move,
Right.
which I thought was awesome. You become friendly with Thor's daughter Thrud here as well. Just one friendly face, sort of in the lodge where you're staying. Odin is very welcoming, and he kind of disarms you a little bit by how casual and accommodating.
Yeah,
I
he's, like,
gues he is.
charming in a way.
Yeah, if you want to upgrade your bow, whatever, do your thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of that's literally what he sounds like. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, do your thing. So I actually this did pay off for me. This his obsession is there's this weird sort of a dimensional rift in his basement, and he thinks that by looking through it he will learn some kind of secret that will prevent Ragnarok. Like he'll be able to see it's some giant magic or something, and it's like he's very consumed by, there's like a lot of books everywhere. He's consumed with knowledge and looking at the past, predicting the future, etc. I thought this was very cool, but it's become sort of a MacGuffin-y kind of thing with the mask, where look, we have to put them only by wearing the mask can you look through this rift. So you have one fragment, and you wind up going to Muspelheim on a quest with Thor to collect another fragment. And I thought this was pretty cool, where it's like he is like nowhere. He despises Atreus.
And you can't control him, right? He's
You
he's
cannot.
a non-controllable companion.
No, you can't give him any
No,
commands or
yep.
anything like that. He's just a total dick.
Yep.
And Angrboda appears very briefly here.
That's the moment where I
And
was
you
like,
got-
no, please,
because I was like, I think I was telling you guys in the group chat at the time, it's like a lot of these more open world games, very stoppy starty, and I'm like, I'm into what's happening right now. Like
Yeah.
we're going to find the mass fragment. I don't really have time to dick around anymore. You know, like let's move the plot along, right? So thankfully it wasn't like a huge intrusion, but very cool part here with Kratos, Mimir, and Freya going back to Midgard when they consult the Norns on what to do. They're kind of these
Love this part.
what would you describe them as? Like these crones who can kind of predict the future, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Woman of Fate from an earlier game, right? Right?
Yeah,
Very
and they
similar.
talk about that, and it's very funny because Kratos mentions that he killed the Sisters of Fate.
Yep.
And Freya's like, why'd you do that? It's like such a stupid idea. It would like tear the fabric of reality apart. Like it makes no sense.
He's like, oops.
It was different times. Oops. Yeah, I don't know. But I thought it was nice to revisit that concept because I did feel like they did a ton with it in God of War 2.
Well, I think I brought this up when it came to the Norns. I thought there was a cool voice acting job
Yes.
where they would have voices mimic each other, speak on top of each other, or they knew what you were going to say before you were going to say it, so they would mock you.
Right.
That sort of thing.
They,
And Nick,
they literally say their lines.
Nick, doesn't
as
it
they're
also
coming
come out of the PS5 controller?
Yeah, when you're walking through the Norn caverns before you reach them, like Mimir mentions, hey, there's whispering voices. If you're playing on PS5, the voices will come out of the DualSense controller.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean it's something different, and this is sort of where you get the spear, where you get the you have to go talk to the mermaid and everything. I wanted to bring up something. I'm not sure if you guys noticed here. Very stupid part here where Brock is helping you forge the spear because it's like you need the spear it's the only thing that'll be fast enough to defeat Heimdall because he can see the future, right?
Not little lizards, though.
Not little
do that.
lizards. So what happens here is you need to go see the mermaid, and he's like, I need some rock of whatever and material, blah, blah, blah. And you have to like chop it off like a little piece of whatever so that he can smith with. And it has like the press R1 to chop. I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm like 20 hours into this game.
Is it
Like,
kind of weird that I didn't know what to do for a while? He was like, all right, you're going to help me. I'm like, wait, what do I do?
Yeah,
I
what
was
do
like
you do?
running around
Go
trying
to
to
that-
figure this
you
out.
mean it's right in front of me?
Yeah, I was like, wait, what
But
the hell is
but
this?
I don't know. It's like kind of a quick time event, but not really.
It was
I was like,
weird.
is it like a backdoor loading screen, or is it what's happening here?
I
Maybe.
think you might be onto something. It's a backdoor loading screen. Or my other theory, it's just who Brock is. He's just kind of fucking with you.
yeah,
He just wants to like make a joke out of
Sure.
it. I don't know, but I thought the same thing. I was like, this is weird.
Did
Why
this
am I
have to
doing
be a
this?
segment? We couldn't just
Right.
go?
Right.
you couldn't
I
just
don't
go.
know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it.
Anyway, so back in the B plot, we have Odin sends Atreus, Thrud, and Heimdall to collect the final mask fragment in Helheim. Atreus fucks up by letting an enormous hellhound loose, which begins tearing open dimensional rifts. So he basically gives up and goes home and asks his dad for help. The pair of them return to Helheim, and they go past. I did mention the last time there's that cool flying like pirate ship
Yep.
segment there. It's kind of like the Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time. Very cool
Yeah, you
stuff.
find that again when you go back to Helheim. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed that segment. And after a very, I thought this boss like kicked my ass.
Oh, Garm? Garm
Yeah.
was a great
Dude,
boss.
you know,
loved that.
maybe I'll bring it up now. As I was playing through Ragnarok, I did laugh at like how different the interpretation of gods were in Ragnarok versus Hellblade.
Yeah.
Because you fight Garm and Fenrir in
Oh,
both
interesting.
games.
Yeah.
Right? And they're very different fights.
It's well, that boss fight is like next level.
Oh, yeah.
That's like scary. This
Yeah.
one is just tough.
Yeah.
I like this fight a lot actually against Garm. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yep.
It was good. And then so they wind up. I didn't even realize this was happening. In the beginning of the game, you have the orb, the Men in Black thing that he puts the wolf's soul into. One of his wolves.
So one of your
dies
pet wolves dies.
in the beginning of the game, Fenrir, and then he releases Fenrir's soul into the undead giant wolf because they couldn't kill it. And it's so
Yes,
funny.
because it has no soul or something. I'm just like, oh, so now we have the giant scary dog is going to be a very nice, like whimpering little guy.
I actually, this has been well known on the show that I'm not a lover of animals.
Jesus Christ.
Here we go.
No, but I was gonna say I took a screenshot of this because I thought it was so cute. When I have a lot of problems with the narrative of this game, but this is not one of them.
Right.
Where I thought it was a very cute resolution where like you can't beat this boss because he's undead, but you put the soul of your deceased pet into Garm, so
Yeah.
then your pet comes back to life as this creature.
Yeah.
It was like very cute.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I really liked this whole section. I thought it really humanized Kratos a little bit too. Because when Atreus comes back and says, Dad, I'm sorry, I messed up, he doesn't really like chastise him like he would. If we were playing 2018, he might be like, you messed up, you have to be better. But instead he says, no, we'll go together and we'll fix this.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really like that coming from Kratos here.
And he seems, at least initially, the giant puppy seems like a great ally. You
Yes,
know, like, oh
agreed.
shit, now we got this thing on our side,
Right.
right? So yeah, that was great. Return to Vanaheim sees you meeting up with this. Okay, so I got it wrong last time. I said it was a deer. When you are in the beginning of God of War 2018, you're hunting with Atreus and he shoots. It's actually a boar, and then and then the boar. They bring it to Freya's, and it's a man in this game.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah,
That
yeah,
guy,
you,
yes.
That guy.
you. Okay. So your task here, I thought this was very existential. Was when you have to return the moon to the sky, was stolen by Heimdall on behalf of Odin to prevent Ragnarok. And I like this mechanic a lot, where you change the time of day to open up different.
Yep, some more Zelda moments
More
here.
Zelda
say the same
stuff,
thing.
yeah, and progress down certain paths. You ring this like bowl or whatever, and the wolves will go across the sky and change the time of day. And so Freyr has been captured here by Odin's forces. You mount a little rescue mission, and you take a ride on his magic boat. And you have the option here. It was kind of funny that it's like it's a very big. It's seeming like a big story moment where one of his companions makes this big sacrifice, and then he jumps off to fight monsters or whatever. But you can like go rescue him, and it's like an optional thing. It's like, oh, he's still alive.
He's okay. He's fine.
He's all right. He's
Yeah.
out there. And there's a lot of cool. You mentioned this earlier. This crater area inhabited by dragons. I thought it was really hard to navigate at first until I realized you can open up the dam, and kind of flood it. And you can traverse it by boat or whatever that way.
I thought so too.
It was one of these areas where I said, I'm going to just run around freely. I'm going to collect all the quests possible, and then I'm going to look at my list later. I'm just going to go look at stuff and familiarize myself and then get it all done later.
It's a kind of a cool area because you get some backstory about Kratos' wife, Faye.
Yeah, you get a lot here.
That apparently she went toe-to-toe with Thor using the Leviathan axe, and that's why the frozen lightning
They have
was
another
there,
one, yeah.
which is
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Like
I wasn't
Lincoln
expecting
Guy.
that at all.
Something that this game does a pretty good job with is you get it. They straddle that line again where there aren't too many side quests, but there are just enough, and they give you important lore that helps support the main plot of either Kratos' wife or other stuff. Most of the side quests do something, and it's not just silly.
It's like pertinent, or at very least, even if it's even in the first game with helping out one of those ghosts, and it turns out to be a trick or whatever, it kind of it tells you a little bit about how Kratos is apprehensive, and he'll be like, well, we can help him out if you want, Atreus, but there will probably be a price. And it's a little learning moment for Atreus, etc. Like, it's not, you never feel in a story sense that it's time wasted. It's not just a checklist, at least not most of them.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good balance of it gives you information about the characters, but it's not necessarily needed to understand the greater narrative.
Yeah, of
Right.
course.
Which is nice.
Definitely. And so you wind up confronting Heimdall here in the jungle. I enjoyed this fight a lot. I felt like it could have been staged a little bit better in terms of I actually got thinking about the arena in Elden Ring where you fight the giant snake guy.
Yeah.
And how memorable it was that you had all the chains above and all like the, boxes
Sure.
and coffins and shit like
Yeah.
that. I feel like the arenas were a little bit lacking. And like in this game, and there was just like in terms of, I think it's because a lot of them they have to be perfectly flat. And I mean, you don't want stuff in your way. You don't want geometry hanging you up.
Could
in
also
the
be
fight.
so the game can run at 60.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like when I thought you were going to fight Heimdall like on top of the wall or something.
That's what I thought.
Like big vista. And
Well, he kind of surprises you, doesn't he? And then it's the
Yes.
boss battle.
yeah, he
think you don't
fights you
expect
with the Sanctuary Guardian from Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think a lot of the boss arenas are like, it's like a wrestling arena. It's like an octagon or something.
Yes.
Yes.
Where you just kind of duke it out man to man, just see what
Well,
happens.
and also we should mention that this fight with Heimdall, there's a big part of this game where, by that I mean a narrative part of this game where Kratos is going to die in the prophecy, and you're not supposed to kill Heimdall because the prophecy says you're going to. That's a big point of contention.
Yes.
But during this boss battle, he
really hesitates.
Right.
He tried not to
He
kill
really
him.
hesitates, but you kind of see I feel like the developers tried to do this thing where Kratos gets that anger again from the early games, and he does end up killing.
Well, because he's such an annoying prick,
Yeah.
Heimdall. And what I loved was they kind of visually represent this by he impales one of his arms with the spear and then blows it up.
Yes.
And that is like
that was sick.
that was one of the it's a little bit hearkening back to the original brutality of the first three God of Wars.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he's fallen back into these old ways. And even though he's not really like relishing it, it's like far more violent than anything you've seen so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
That's a moment that gets the dads going. You know? I love that shit. But no, he winds up killing him here. It's good that you brought that up because it seems like oh shit.
Yeah,
What
here
do
we
we do
go.
now?
Well, I mean, there's a big point of contention in the game where, Kratos, he says all the time, I just want to protect Atreus. That's why, he doesn't necessarily say that's why I'm his dad, but he feels like, that's his duty is to protect.
Yeah.
But Heimdall is going to kill Atreus. And so Kratos wants to prevent that, but Kratos killing Heimdall is a part of the prophecy. And at the end of the prophecy, shows Kratos dying.
Well,
Right.
it's what it reminded me of, at least the setup was like it's a very like fate versus free will thing, and how much control do you really have, or like what are you really gonna do? It reminded me of a lot of like the Matrix Reloaded with the two doors. One of them you can save the world, and one of them you can save Trinity, and like which
Yeah,
one do you
I
want?
see.
And a lot of Matrix this episode, but no, I mean I was. At that point, I was like, "Shit, you know what I mean?" Like
Yep.
he did the thing he wasn't supposed to do, but it is what it
Mimir
is.
says that too.
Yeah, like I don't know what you're gonna do now, brother, or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know.
To Kratos' credit, he did try not to kill
He tried.
Heimdall, but Heimdall was just too much of a prick. I might have done the same thing. He was annoying.
Yeah,
You ever, I don't mean this with full sincerity, but it just came into my brain. Do you feel like maybe some of the plot of this game could have been solved if people just said stuff out loud to each other? Example, don't you think when like Kratos had Heimdall like pinned up with spears, don't you wish, like a part of me wished Kratos went up and went like, listen, dummy, the prophecy says if I kill you, we're fucked, so shut the fuck up and stop doing this.
I think, but he knew that, right? Like
Right.
Heimdall knew that. He was trying to goad him into, you
Because he
know.
can kind
know.
of see the future or whatever bullshit. Maybe
Well,
he
I
can
feel like
kinda
that's
tell,
kind of
but-
where this plot falls apart a little.
It's like how much control or like, it's the omniscience and
Yes, yes.
omnipotence are kind of crossing here.
And the
Yeah.
Norns kind of say it too, right?
Yeah.
They say, we don't make prophecies. We just think everybody's really easy to predict, and that's what we write down.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, Atreus goes back to Asgard at this point. He feels pretty confident about, I think now that we've solved the Garm situation, I can get back in Odin's good graces one last time to figure out this mask once and for all. Goes back to Asgard, gets into a bar fight with Thor and Thrud, which seems very little like out of place. Did you feel like that served a lot of purpose?
Well, you know what it is? Well, is this the setup where Thor is drunk and Thrud is mad at him?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like not a good setup for Atreus, but more so for Thor, but you don't play as Thor.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe kinda
well,
thing.
well, the thing about Asgard that kind of is off-putting is aren't all of Odin's soldiers undead?
Yeah, they're Einherjar, right?
They're all
Pretty
undead,
much.
so
Yeah,
it feels
those
kind of
guys.
weird that like Thor's just kind of like drinking with them. It's kind of weird.
It says a lot about Thor, I think, more than about
No, I think you're right,
Asgard.
Nick. It's really more of a setup for Thor's character that I just think ended up being a little too
Atreus
silly.
is just sort of there for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like because you don't play as Thor. It would have been weird to have you play as Thor doing a bar fight, so they
Yeah.
just had you play as Atreus to watch it happen.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kind of get why they had to, because after that I'm like, damn, Thor has got some issues, man.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean that's at least you kind of realize the extent of his
Yeah.
alcoholism. I guess
I did laugh during the bar fight, so it was entertaining for me
Sure,
at least.
sure, that's something. You go back to Niflheim, and it seems like you might be starting to bond with Thor a little bit. You're kind of like breaking through to him. Unfortunately, it kind of gets snatched away when his wife Sif shows up and convinces Thor to try and kill Atreus. So Atreus gets the mask together and winds up escaping at the last second. So I want to bring up very briefly. This is a problem that I have with these PS4 games that are like, oh, we're prioritizing the narrative. Like that's paramount. The story is paramount. They break these central storytelling rules so often, and sometimes you can break rules. Sometimes you can bend them. Sometimes you can break them. But it makes it when you have like a conventional it's a pretty conventional plot, like in terms of character growth and stuff like that. You should probably adhere to at least some of them, especially when you're working with all these high concepts like the future and Norse mythology and everything. A little plant payoff goes a long way. And so right before Atreus goes back to Asgard, Sindri's like, hey, use this thing if you want to get out of a sticky situation. Like, that should have been introduced way
I
back
thought so
then.
too. He used it so quickly. I was like,
Almost
wait a minute.
I'm like, oh, this will pay off way later. But it
Yeah.
was like literally like the
Immediate.
next cut.
Hey, here's the thing you need that's going to pay off in 20 minutes.
Yeah, why
Right.
didn't Sindri
I
give
was,
it to him immediately?
you
That's
know,
weird. I thought that was odd too.
You gotta think these things through a little bit more. He escapes. The Fellowship starts
Fellowship. I
They
love
start
it.
to formulate a plan, like because you kind of got everybody back together at Sindri's house, and Tyr abruptly is very like he's gonna get everybody's ass in gear. He's like, I think it's finally time for me to get us all to Asgard. And they're like, wait, how can you go to Asgard? And then Brock is very suspicious of him, starts questioning his plan. All of a sudden, Tyr stabs Brock in the chest and
Dude.
reveals he was Odin the whole time.
Fuck.
Dude, honestly, I thought this was the best moment of the game.
This was awesome.
Absolutely
Love
cool.
this.
Because it's like, it kind of, yes, it's sort of weird that it's like, we don't really know the extent of everyone's powers. Like, who else can do that? Was
Well,
that one of
kind of the
Odin's
Let me
Odin's
say
gods, I
this,
guess.
though. They definitely fooled me.
Yeah.
I thought Tyr was Tyr the whole game. They got me. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah.
They also did set it up properly where Tyr is in his room alone, and that's when he goes back to Asgard. Is
Yes.
when he closes himself in his room.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
they do
interesting, too.
because they did close that plot hole where how is Atreus working with Odin if Odin is at Sindri's house? He's not.
Right.
Yeah,
They're not together at the same time.
Haven't you ever noticed you haven't seen Tyr and Odin in the same place at the same
Yep,
time?
yeah. So I mean, well, I think they do a good job where I wasn't suspicious of that.
No.
They did a good job.
No, definitely not.
This could have very easily been botched as like, aha, gotcha. But no,
Well,
they really set this up
It's
perfectly.
unfortunate the game craters at this point, but we'll talk about it.
Well, so so this aspect of the Tyr reveal, I don't think was botched at all. I think it was very well
This was
executed.
this was awesome.
It was a real like, oh shit, because it's you're kind of reeling and like, wow, he got us. He got us
Isn't this
he
when
got
I
us
messaged
good.
the chat like, yo?
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Whoa.
Yeah. Huge, and then you sent us that video about how he's blind in his right eye, and so he brushes past Atreus because he doesn't
Yes.
see him. All these little, that's the kind of storytelling that we like. You kind
That
of
was
have these little line up these dominoes, and then you let them.
Now you think back and you're like, it was so obvious in retrospect that this wasn't actually Tyr.
Right. So everyone is very kind of rattled by this. Kratos and Atreus, they briefly go hunting, and they, it's kind of a transparent attempt to harken back to the beginning of the previous game.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, what are we doing here? Let's go back.
We gotta
And
get
let's,
back.
we've aired out our thoughts and feelings. Let's head home. So something that really bothered me about the end of this game. Sindri never forgives you for something that is very clearly partially his fault. Okay, so I understand in the beginning that he's pissed off. He's just lost his brother. You know, it's partially his fault that he never told him about the whole resurrection thing and how he never fully put back together his soul or something. I'm not really clear on the particulars.
Pretty much it.
But in terms of like this is sort of something where I think they're trying to present Atreus with something unforgivable to live with, but it's really not all his fault. It's very nobody saw this coming. No, not even us sitting here in the room. So it's like, I think we're all three of us are pretty smart. And like the guys in the moment, maybe, I don't know, but it was just, it made it Sindri like annoying to me. Like, well, come on.
I think it's fun. It's not funny, but I think what's funny is like, Kratos is the man of reason for the only time ever.
Yeah.
Right. Where I think Kratos says he fooled all of us.
Right.
Like, and this did get me emotionally a little bit. There was a moment where Sindri says something to Atreus, like, I give everything to you.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's like, I fixed your shit. I gave you this little stone so you could escape. And now Brock is dead.
You're my house.
Yeah. Like I gave you my house. Like, I think I at least think they played this off well enough for initially, where like I understand that part where I have not had life and death situations like this, but I have said that kind of stuff to people where, hey, I have given you all of these things and you do this.
Right.
Like that. I get that.
Yeah.
I think for me too, I think it's not just Sindri being mad at Atreus. I think Sindri deep down is very mad at himself.
Yeah, probably.
For playing a role in what got his brother killed.
Yeah.
And while he's kind of like he's showing his emotions and pushing them at Atreus instead of focusing inward, and that's what's making him appear so angry all the time.
Yeah.
It's like he's really not, it's weird to say he's not mad at Atreus. He clearly is, but his conflict is internal. And he is just pushing that at Atreus to just maybe absolve himself of the blame, put the blame somewhere. He's so mad at himself.
That's fine. I just hated that it never like resolved.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very, we'll get to it later, but
they don't.
Okay. So one last little trip here. Kratos and Atreus going back to, there's a lot of back and forth in this game, going to Muspelheim in search of Surtur, another of the gods, who tells them that he will help as long as they fulfill the prophecy in a contrived alternate way. So basically they need his help to instigate Ragnarok, and he's like, well, as long as we do it this way. And it's like,
this is another moment where, isn't it so funny that Surtur is like this sad sack guy, but
and he's been there the whole time.
In Hellblade he's like this unbelievable boss.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it really weird?
Yeah, that was, oh man,
it's hard for me to like separate those things.
That was a great boss.
I thought this part was really strange, and I think
it's truncated and weird.
I think Kratos and Atreus actually mentioned that. Like, I don't know who says it, but maybe Atreus says, "Does this feel too easy?"
Yeah.
and it's like, I was like, yes, Atreus, it does.
Well, so yeah,
yes, it's prophecy. But
I think what. Well, I mean, I think I mentioned there's a lot of back and forth here. I think there really should have been a Svartalheim segment, Alfheim segment, Muspelheim segment, all instead of all these back and forth, these little truncated trips back and forth, and then like when you're almost done with the game, then you go back to wherever and you solve all the puzzles you missed and stuff. All this back and forth is very like, oh yeah, here and there's this guy, and like it makes certain areas feel less developed. Because Niflheim and Muspelheim were kind of puzzle areas in the previous, or mini game areas in the previous game, and there's like a little bit more to do now in the story segments, but they don't feel quite as fleshed out as the other ones, and it's just like, oh, I don't know. You're right that it felt weird and truncated and whatnot, but I did like. Essentially, when he agrees, he leads you to the part in between the realms where Muspelheim meets Niflheim, I believe, and it's like this big like abyss of like stars.
It's like
and
where
stuff.
you fight the Quest 64 final boss.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
it's very
I
similar.
hate that you just said that.
It's very
'cause it is.
similar.
I thought this was probably the last moment where I was like wowed by this game,
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
fight
yeah,
the
yeah.
two Valkyries at once. It was very
pretty
like,
cool.
oh man, this is fucking awesome. Like very, I was very into it. And
Everything after, I'm not very into.
but sort of transforms into Ragnarok the guy, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
At this point, very visually dazzling, and we're kind of all ready for the final act here, right? So I'm just gonna kind of say I'm gonna rapid fire my thoughts here. If you have anything to chip in on,
About the end game here.
about the end game,
Ugh.
each point getting into the event that is Ragnarok, right? So the gang circles up back in Midgard, and most of the realms are going to unite against Odin now, right? A lot of this is handled very abruptly. I think it could have benefited from a more balanced storytelling approach, wherein you kind of, in my opinion, I thought it was when everyone finally converges on Asgard, it should feel like the triumphant final movement of a symphony. You know, like not that this was the most successful they've ever done it, but the end of Avengers, when everyone kind of comes together and you know they finally take on
There just
Thanos.
wasn't enough setup for that to happen.
No, in terms of like recognizing like different characters and stuff, it just could have been a lot more impactful. When all the different characters head off to their respective assigned realms, like all your party, it's like, well, I'll go to
I'll rally the dwarves. You rally these guys.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I think this is something that you should have been doing the entire game.
Time. Yes.
Like maybe we take another stab at the Mass Effect 3 kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like where every time you go to a different realm, you solve like a central conflict.
Yes.
Whereas I forget which character is responsible for this, but the war between the light and the dark elves is resolved off camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Freyr is just like, oh yeah, I did it. It's cool. It worked.
Yeah, I was like, not that I think Kratos is a great
negotiator,
yeah.
or anything like that, but in terms of, I felt like it didn't feel like your accomplishment. You know what I
No.
mean? It just kind of felt like a thing that happened.
One thing that I thought of, like, you know, you don't do a ton in Helheim. I thought that in the Garm segment, you know, you accidentally free Garm, but then, you know, you bring him back and you solve that situation, close the rifts. I thought maybe that should have been the central quest to have Helheim help you out in the end. I don't know why that wasn't required to do that. That was my
I
thought.
think what a problem in this game inherently is the levels are used as a vessel to do your thing, but you don't actually rally anyone at any point.
No.
You are in that level to do a thing that you need to do.
And that's like, why did we spend our time doing that instead of having a meaningful character interaction? But in terms of that, yeah, the dwarves don't show up at all.
I honestly think this was cut. Like, I think
Just some
this,
cut content here.
here's what I mean, I'm not going to stomp all over your speech here, but this final act, what a lot of this bothered me, really the whole thing. But I think Sindri like reluctantly says, yeah, I'm going to go get the dwarves.
Yeah.
Then he shows up with nothing and there's just a one-off line. Oh, it's only Sindri. And they don't talk about it at all. He just shows up by himself.
No, he says enough dwarves have died for this war or something like that.
Dude, it's a throwaway line.
Let me tell you. Okay,
Please
so
go ahead.
I have a lot of criticisms about this final act.
I think we all do.
When you're warping into Asgard here, you kind of do get the feels like landing on the Normandy beach. Like, let's fucking go. You gotta get to the other side of the wall or whatever, right? But there are towers where all the other realms are warping in, right? And you need, apparently, because Ragnarok was formed between Niflheim and Muspelheim, both of those towers are destroyed by Odin's forces in the very beginning. And I'm like, why didn't they do that before everybody got there?
That's a great point.
Does
It's a great
anybody
point.
know? Like, and in terms of like, they do it to prevent Ragnarok from reaching Asgard. So I thought, oh, this is where Fenrir is going to come in, and he's going to tear open a hole that Ragnarok can come through. That's not what happens.
Nope.
Maybe you should have written this.
Maybe I should write every fucking game so until these people get their acts together.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, okay, well we can find a new way to open up the wall because Ragnarok's not going to make it to Ragnarok, right? So then Ragnarok somehow shows up anyway, and they're like, okay, well, we don't need him, and in fact he might actually like fuck things up worse anyway. So some of us are going to have to keep him distracted, and the rest of you go do what we were here to do to begin with, right? Like that's how it plays out. They finally I see, this is another, like, even if the going up the wall was easy the first time, this time it could have been you're fighting people, you go up the wall, you knock some of it down, then you go through it, right? And you have you get into the final confrontation here with Thor, right? This boss fight was okay, right?
I thought it was mostly fine. I think there was a weird thing about it though, but you can go right ahead.
Is the weird thing the line that he says?
No, it's but I'll let you know after you do your spiel.
Okay, so
I know what Nick's going to bring up.
Okay.
So the thing that all right, so somebody gave me shit about this on Twitter.
Oh no.
But I think I think there is no other way to interpret this. At one point, Atreus is talking to Thor, he's like shouting at him, he's like, this isn't what Thrud wants, his daughter, right? And he says, keep her name out of your mouth. And I'm like, listen, yes, people have said that for a long time, but I have no doubt in my mind that was a Will Smith reference. I
have no doubt.
I have
That's so
absolutely
funny. I
no
missed that.
doubt that they gave into memes there and they just had him. Throw that in. Oh, you got him in the booth. Throw a couple joke lines in, right?
That's so
And
funny.
it just took me out of it because I know what they were doing. But yeah, I don't know. This is I didn't think it was as impactful as the first fight with Thor. You had some thoughts.
Okay, so while I don't necessarily mind the fight with Thor, it's like a mano-a-mano Kratos versus Thor thing. At some point earlier in the game, when Kratos is walking with Atreus, they're like worried about Thor. Atreus says something like, but father, you couldn't beat Thor back then. How can you beat him now? And Kratos says, well, I didn't have you with me. Atreus isn't with him when he beats Thor. It's
Oh
like,
my
it's
God.
Like, what the hell?
Oh my God.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, why did you even say that?
So here's the thing. Kyle had to explain this to me, our friend Kyle, that Thor knocks Atreus into the past, and then that's when so essentially the snake from earlier was the big snake.
It becomes Jormungandr,
It
right?
becomes, yeah, and which doesn't even do that much in the final battle anyway, so it
No.
makes it all feel completely like pointless.
Yeah, I have a lot of issues with that as well, but
Anyway, so Atreus is kind of knocked out for a little bit, but what winds up happening is Odin kills Thor, runs him through with a spear, because he's pretty much, he's like, I'm done taking orders from you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because he's trash talking him, and he winds up killing him. What do you guys think of the Odin battle?
It's very similar to like I shouldn't say similar. It's fine. I don't hate it. It feels a little bit too similar. Did either of you beat Prince of Persia: Sands of Time? The actual final boss is you have to beat the old man in Farah's bedroom, right, or
yes, I
something
remember
like that.
this.
I shouldn't
Yeah.
have spoiled that, but I did.
Yeah, whatever.
And so it
It's
feels
old.
a little bit ironic, but I feel like it's fine. They couldn't have put you in a scenario where he was too hard to beat,
Yeah.
or else because you had to do too much boss rushing in a row. It's fine.
yeah, I think it was mostly okay. Like, it wasn't super hard. I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was kind of cool because you have, I think Atreus is your companion, but Freya's also there.
Yeah.
Or are they both controllable?
They're
Something
both
like-
controllable.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. You have like the gangs all here to try and stop
It's
Odin.
fine.
I thought it was fine mostly.
There's no problem with the fight itself. It's just the final act is so truncated and weird that that's just how it feels.
Am
Yeah.
I wrong to say that I think narratively, at least, before you're going to Ragnarok, I thought the scene with Kratos and Atreus in the tent, I thought was very impactful. Where
Yeah.
Kratos tells the story, I think he's talking about himself,
Yeah.
of the logger who's like wishing for death.
Yeah.
It's like Kratos trying to say, hey, I might be going to my death here.
Yeah.
But I feel like they built, like, that moment was great, and they built a great narrative around what Ragnarok was supposed to be, but they forgot to put a game in it.
Yeah, like Ragnarok, there's just nothing there. Like
Yeah.
before we even talk about the Odin fight and beyond, the whole final act is bizarre to me. But what's really weird to me is like Sindri almost like ironically breaks the wall down for you. Or think about this. Like there are during the final battle, quote unquote, like Kratos is shouting like, we have to go like help the realm gates. You don't. Oh, we have to go stop the war machines. You don't do anything. And then you just do this boss rush and the game ends. But Riley, like, please continue here.
Okay. So yeah, you're right. You're all right. You're all right about everything. So they defeat Odin. I felt like I was just like, I was not like, yeah, he killed Brock, but I wasn't like, I need to kill him. I need to get this. Yeah, I wasn't really like in my bones. I didn't really like, oh, this guy's, he's such a, I didn't feel like you felt with like Heimdall. Like, I can't wait to crush this little worm in my hands. You know what I mean?
Fucking guy.
Odin, for all his faults, I think because of his acting job, was actually kind of likable.
Yeah. I think that did a lot. So yeah, they take him down, and very, very weird turn of events here, where Atreus traps him in one of those Men in Black balls.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know why they're doing this. Number one, maybe because is he unkillable or something like that?
I don't know.
They did kill him technically twice, right? Because they beat him in 2 fights. I don't know if he's unkillable.
So let me kind of, I do like one aspect of this about where the mask is destroyed, where he says, no, I need to know what happens next. And it's like, that's the great irony of him wanting to look into this crack of essentially his own oblivion. Like, there is nothing next. It's the end of your life. I thought that was cool.
Yes.
But it is such a weird, like, kind of ironic on to the service of nothing thing that Sindri smashes the ball and he says, that's what happens next, and he just disappears. And it's like, that's just to validate somebody on some forum who said, I bet Sindri kills Odin. You know what I mean? Like, I was very like, I think it was just that the character was getting under my skin, and I was just like, yeah, he avenged his brother, but it's like, stop being a little bitch, man. Like, and I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Is
like,
it weird that I kind of laughed at that? Because I just wasn't really expecting it. I kind of like putting Odin into a marble, but
I'm so disappointed that I enjoyed so much of this game, but the last act is just,
it's really the last like 15 minutes.
there's just nothing in it. There's nothing in it. What I thought was gonna, because get into my brain space for a second.
That's tough, but
It's
we'll try.
very hard to do. Here's what I thought was gonna happen. In theory, Odin doesn't want Ragnarok. Kratos doesn't want Ragnarok. But in the prophecy, Kratos is gonna die because of certain things that happen, and Atreus is going to essentially betray Kratos to work with Odin, but to stop Ragnarok, to stop essentially the apocalypse. But none of this happens. I thought what was going to happen was we were going to have some weird allyship between Odin and Kratos to stop a greater thing. And that doesn't happen at all. There's just this weird truncated boss rush and the game ends. It's really strange.
That's what I meant about having a pretty conventional story structure.
I mean, do you guys think I'm wrong? Like,
no, I don't think you're wrong. Is this
No.
where we talk about crazy theories about what happened and should have happened in the game?
Let me just get to like what actually happens.
Sure.
And then we'll do,
Sure.
Okay. So so this happens, and Freyr sacrifices himself to save everybody else from Ragnarok.
Yay. Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't really care
like,
about this guy.
I don't know. Did you guys feel anything for this character?
No, and what I just think is so odd, the game is called God of War Ragnarok. Ragnarok is this giant apocalyptic event and is also this giant god guy, but nothing happens. Like he
destroys Asgard.
No,
but
what I mean
that's
is like, but it's like off camera, or like it's a cinematic. Nothing happens.
Well, he kills some guy that listens to the Grateful Dead a lot. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Even Freya doesn't seem too torn up about it.
No,
but everyone gathers in the cave from the beginning of the game. You get a little sort of curtain call for all the surviving characters. And Atreus tells Kratos he's leaving to go do giant shit. And you know what the problem that I have with this is that they make such a big deal. I'm going to be very incisive in my critiques of these PS4 narrative cinematic titles here. With the last you see of Atreus is it's like the camera is like focused on Kratos' shoulder, and you just see Atreus like disappear out, like climbing up a cliff somewhere in the background. And I'm thinking, like, by contrast, we're all big Lord of the Rings fans here. There are so many great shots of Frodo when it's trying to convey that he feels really alone.
Yeah.
Like right after Gandalf dies, spoiler, you see him like when he's just like, everyone is kind of grieving in their own way, and Frodo is just sort of like he's incorrigible by himself. He looks very small. There is so little thought put into like the composition of what it was meaningful, like in terms of how anybody is feeling, anybody in the scene is feeling. You know, like we get the hug, you know, Atreus remains, right, and all that stuff, and you get some payoff with Kratos when it comes to seeing the future, that people will eventually revere him, right? So that's the crux of like the emotional sort of ending here. But it just felt very, I think this is maybe one of the weaknesses of the tracking, the camera, like how everything is one shot, where it has limitations, even though it's a cool trick they pull. Like in terms of you never really get those, you know, God of War 3 when the camera pans way out and it makes you feel like tiny, and it's like it makes everything else feel a lot more epic. I think that's what the Ragnarok event could have benefited from, where you do this, or you maybe Kratos becomes gigantic again, you know, something like that. I don't know, man. It just felt very inconclusive to me, and it's just like, I don't know. What it was like? What am I supposed to be feeling here?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you know, yeah, they're going their separate ways. They'll obviously get back together later on, some other game, you know, like.
And there's a really weird moment when you're escaping Asgard, where there's like a weird like music video Jacob's Ladder moment where, like, do you guys remember this? There's like a cinematic where it's like you're looking through the eyes of Atreus, and Kratos he's like holding you in his arms, and it's in like black and white. It's really strange, almost as if like they just ran out of time and they had to throw something together. It was really, I don't understand.
I feel like it did a real, like this whole ending here did a really good job for wrapping up kind of Kratos's quote unquote arc. If this is indeed the end of his adventures, I think he got a very satisfying end in what he really wanted. But everything else was very lacking.
Well,
I really liked what they did with Kratos, but no one else.
I actually feel the opposite.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm going to just sort of, this is tying into my ending here. But in terms of Kratos, I felt like his character really kind of fell through the cracks in some places.
Yes.
Like he does have a good conclusion, where, you know, he can kind of trust his son, you know, is going to be safe in his adventures or whatever. But in terms of his role in the story, right? So I'm gonna tell you a huge grievance I have with this game is that big tier reveal happens. He was Odin the whole time, right? After the game concludes, you can find the real Tyr, and he's still alive, and he's somewhere else. I think he's in Niflheim. This completely undoes the impact of that twist to me.
Yes.
Where
really, I feel so opposite, but please keep going.
So with Tyr, basically you find him and he appears in the realms and he checks in on them. And you don't have any sort of dialogue about like, my son really looked up to you or anything like that. He's just kind of wandering around doing his thing. What I thought was so impactful about he was dead the whole time. We were believing erroneously in this vain hope that this guy could help us, and he's not who he says he was. He was dead. I was an idiot to believe that, and because of that, in the vacuum, Kratos must attain the mantle of the God of War. He leads them into war in this hour of need, right? And if he's just alive, it's like, oh, I missed Ragnarok. What happened? You know, like, what? No, come on.
See, that's what actually makes me feel like Kratos is more important, because Tyr, when you find him, he doesn't act a lot different than how Odin portrays him in his illusion.
Right.
Which to me says that's why Kratos has to step up and be the God of War, because their God of War in Norse mythology has failed. That's what it said to me.
Yeah, I just felt like,
but it happens.
I get where you're coming
from. But it happens in the post game.
Yes,
this is just one post game scene.
No. What I mean, I'm saying that like, but why make that choice? Like, yeah, maybe you do find the real one, but after the credits roll.
No thanks.
Yeah, no
I thought it would have been
thanks.
really out of place if it was before the credits rolled.
Or
Because that would have undone
But I mean,
the
here's
reveal.
my kind of bone
Yeah.
of contention. Me personally, it's only really worked once for me. Like this sort of the game ends and then there's like a true ending. I don't really love that in a game. I think Arkham Knight was the best for me because it was like Batman is cleaning up his villains one last time before he goes into hiding or retirement or whatever.
Yeah.
This was like, so I didn't 100% it. I'll be clear, but I watched the key scenes afterwards, after you roll the credits of the final, you get Brock's funeral and everything like that. And none of this felt like in any way conclusive to me of insofar as thinking about how the original trilogy ended and how I was expecting like that level of carnage for this. Like,
Yeah.
Ragnarok is supposed to be the death of all the gods, as far as I know, and that fewer die in here than they do in God of War 3.
Yeah.
And none of this really feels like, there are no returning characters from the original trilogy. I was like, okay, so this Norse era, this is going to be it. Like, it's going to be all cleaned up. And it's like, well, so you have this mess with Sindri that's unresolved. You have no idea really what Atreus is going to wind up doing. It's very like, see you later. That's it. That's
yeah.
That's Ragnarok,
Exactly.
and my one of my biggest complaints is this whole Kratos' death thing that is never ever addressed. Not even as a fake out. Besides that, him getting killed in the
Opening Thor fight.
in
sure,
the
yeah.
fake game over screen, which is played as like a joke.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem with the ending overall. Besides all of this stuff we're talking about, is it feels like it's so important to the plot where Kratos dies to resolve Ragnarok. But it's okay with me that he doesn't.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about it.
No, what I was expecting was a fake out. What I thought would have been really cool is maybe you start the first act, you play the first act as Kratos, and then he dies, right? And then Atreus has to go through the second act of the game by himself, and then has to resurrect him somehow for Ragnarok because they need a god of war. And in the third act, you play as Kratos again, right?
Maybe.
Or you do both of them, right? Something like that, where you kind of have, oh fuck, Kratos died. We need Kratos, like I can't believe the prophecy is coming true, and then you kind of reverse it by your own kind of strength, like getting Johnny Depp back from the Pirates
Yes.
of the Caribbean when he's on the ocean floor, or they need to resurrect Superman for the Justice League, whatever, something like that. It neither follows through on the prophecy nor subverts it. It's just not addressed.
It's just not addressed at all.
Yeah, I think what the main point of that prophecy was at the very end, when Atreus has to make the choice to give the mask to Odin or to destroy it. I think what was going to happen, he gives the mask to Odin. If that were to happen, Kratos dies, and Atreus works for Odin. I believe that's what the prophecy said, and by Atreus just not doing that kind of subverted the prophecy.
I wish they
believe that's
said something.
I believe that's what happened. But
Yeah.
Riley, I think what you just mentioned about playing one act as Kratos, then maybe as Atreus, that really lends into my chaos theory about what I thought was going to happen in this game.
Yeah.
When I first learned about the marble thing, I said, oh my God, okay, hear me out. This makes no sense and it's totally unhinged, but I thought this is what was going to happen to an extent. Kratos dies at some point, right? Whenever. Then Atreus finds Surtur and puts him in a marble and revives Kratos as Surtur, who then becomes Ragnarok.
Oh man!
And destroys Asgard.
Oh,
Yeah, where
I
he
thought
becomes kind of like Riley. He becomes giant
yes,
theory.
exactly.
Right?
That was my unhinged
Listen,
theory.
all these ideas are better than what actually happens. So, getting into my final thoughts here personally, the team went back and forth on Ragnarok being 2 games rather than three games. Like the whole
Revival trilogy.
Do we want a trilogy or do we want 2 games? Initially, I was very content with, okay, let's not stretch. I think Norse mythology has been done to death. I think 2 games is fine. I think that for me, I don't know. It just feels weird. Do you guys think this should have been 3 games?
I don't. It's hard to say. I don't think it needed to be 3 games because this final act just left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Like and then it's so hard to predict then we've done it already, but it's so hard to predict what they should have done, or if we were, what do they call it, Monday morning quarterbacking or whatever, or Monday morning game deving. Like if this final act was just handled better, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But because I have a bad taste in my mouth for this game because of how it ends. And now I don't know. It's so hard.
I think for me too, I don't know if it needs a second game. I think my off the top of my head.
You mean a third game total?
Sorry, yes, a third game total, a second, like Ragnarok Part 1 and 2, I guess. Off the top of my head, I think no, it doesn't, because I think the game is not super long as it is. Like maybe the main story is like 30 hours, maybe 40 if you do all the side quests. I think, man, it's just the whole actual Ragnarok portion
that's wrong.
So limited and so like unsatisfying.
I don't really get, like, maybe, I mean, I don't really know that much about game development, but I asked you guys this. I'm like, why is it so often that the ending of games is terrible? Like, why didn't you prioritize the ending versus the third quarter or something? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know.
Maybe it's just to keep people playing longer. Like, let's keep the plate spinning as long as we can, and then at the last act, well, we didn't get to finish the fucking ending of the story. It's all been leading up to Ragnarok, and we fucked up Ragnarok.
Dude, you know, it's. I don't know the answer to that. Like, I'm not a game dev, but. Music is not that much different than, I guess, games and movies. Please start well and end well.
Oh, yeah.
Because then I would feel better. Okay, ready? 80% of Silent Hill 2 is really boring. The last 20% is heartbreaking, so it's awesome.
It's an all-timer.
Right.
With
Ragnarok, I enjoyed like hours 10 through 30. But then, you know, but when I'm...
It's like the opposite.
Dude, but you know what I mean? But it's like the last 3 or 4 hours, or not even, the last hour or two, I'm like... Dude, you fucked it up.
Why is the Angerboda yak section longer than Ragnarok? That's
what
I want to know.
Ouch.
That's what I want to know.
Yo, clip that.
Oopsie daisy.
Yeah.
So,
Ouch.
I mean, so do you guys feel as though, I mean, I think the answer is generally no, but how much do you guys feel like they lived up to the promise of the previous game?
I think they did it okay. Really, like, the whole Ragnarok event really... like, I feel like took a back seat, whether that's good or bad, to trying to build up Kratos and Atreus' relationship. I feel like they did a better job at doing Kratos and Atreus in this game rather than 2018. But the major narrative of Ragnarok really just fell to the wayside.
Well, I thought the whole thing was going to be Ragnarok. Like, the whole thing was going to be mayhem.
Me
but
too.
It's like,
yeah, Ragnarok is 10 minutes at the end of the game.
Dude, and I was This is an audio podcast. I was clapping for Nick, where I think he's correct. Where my critique of 2018, back in 2018, when I played it before you guys, was people were really lauding this game for the father-son relationship. I thought that game was all right. You know what I mean? I like it. It's fine. But I thought this game did a way better job with characterization of the father-son thing.
Some of the other characters like Freya.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This game did a lot of narrative, or whether it's dialogue, narrative, or those payoffs way better than 2018. But the whole point of the game was mishandled.
Right.
Which, it's just... I don't have a lot to say other than I have a bad taste in my mouth for this game because of how it ends. And it's hard for me to get over it.
Yeah. Yep. I think there was just too many setups without payoffs ultimately.
Yes.
Too many balls in the air that got dropped. Didn't feel that conclusion, that final note. I didn't really, because you have that whole... like, oh, well, we can clean up the other realms afterwards. Like, it should have just been done. Should have been done right then and there. Okay, so just speaking about the future here, Eric Williams, the director, wants to work on a Castlevania game next. Do you have any interest in that? What do you think?
I mean, that's hard. Where Castlevania... I guess, I don't want to say in my view, because I'm not an authority on that franchise.
Right.
That is your classic side scroller. They originated Metroidvania shit.
You think he would translate it to that would be crazy.
Translate it to 3D?
Yeah.
I mean, that is such an interesting idea that I'll take it, but I think Castlevania,
because it hasn't been done yet.
I think Castlevania fans would be fucking mad.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
But they said the same thing about Metroid, and it turned out great.
That's great. I mean, I think I might like it, but I'm not a hardcore fan.
Sure.
So.
And so we get to the final question here. Are you interested in more God of War? And if so, what would it look like, and what pantheon would you like it to explore?
I'm not interested. It's going to look exactly the same
Yeah.
as what we've been playing.
I played God of War 2018, and then the day after I finished it, I played God of War Ragnarok. I do not want to see another Nornir chest. I don't want to see the Leviathan axe for a very long time.
No. Yeah.
Ask me that question again in 3 years if there's a sequel being planned, but for now, I am all set with God of War.
I'm good for like 8 years.
Yeah, but I also don't really like. I've seen that around too, where they might make Kratos go to different pantheons.
So
I don't like that idea.
Here's the thing. I don't like it. I don't like, as you say, the magic treehouse going to different. If they absolutely have to do it, number one, I think Egypt's the best possibility because they're so different from like the European.
I can tell you it's going to be better than Assassin's Creed if they do it.
Right. And number two, I really hope they change the gameplay significantly. I want it to be as different as these were from the original trilogy. Hopefully, I still don't think they got the action totally,
100% on the money.
On the money. I feel like if it could be a little bit more fluid, I feel like it could stand to be a little bit more action oriented than these were. I mean, it's really, I really need to lay off Kratos for a little bit, give him some time alone.
I think that's what he really wants.
Same with Atreus. What grade would you guys give this game?
I've said this so often on this show, and it's not on purpose. When a game doesn't end well, I feel like I have a bias towards giving it a worse grade, right? Because if you don't stick the landing, it's like, I don't know, I think Silent Hill is an A and 80% of the game is not very good. Silent Hill 2, I should say. Okay, I am going to say it's a B because I'm trying not to be too negative about how this ended.
Yeah.
Like I'll say this. When Brock got the dagger, I was like, shit, is this game of the year?
Right.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
No.
They fucking blew it. Nope, B.
Oops.
Sorry. Nick.
Yeah, so I think for me, whenever in any sort of media, character relationships are always more important to me than the overarching narrative. That overarching narrative never does a lot for me, I'll tell you that much, in whatever media it is. It's really how the characters interact is what really pulls me into a story. So for that, I feel like I don't want to forgive the ending of Ragnarok, but it didn't affect me as much as it may have affected you, Greg, or you as well, Riley. So, and I think the final part before the quote-unquote real credit roll with the Brock funeral and then Mimir finally getting Brock's riddle right. I was like, okay, I like that. I like that a lot. So I think because of all that, and I do like the action, you know, I get into the nitty gritty. I like the combat of this and God of War 2018. It was pretty much more of the same.
Yep.
For those reasons, I think this game is a B+ for me.
Okay, Riley, go.
Yep. A lot of good thoughts here. It's a B for me. I was leaning towards B+, but that last act kind of, and like all the little kind of shortcomings and weird pacing and stuff like that kind of built up. So this is lower than the previous game for me. Despite I did like how much stuff was in it and how much variety and surprises there were, whether it be finding the giant whale or the giant jellyfish or, all these little character interactions along the way. It was just so much more. I felt like that's kind of what a lot of open world games have been missing is surprises. Because you get a certain point, you've seen the ulcerated tree spirit 7 times, you know, we can go down that road another time. But I did like it a lot, just not as much as I was hoping to.
Yeah.
It's a B. It's about the same as God of War 3, I think for me. It's that level. Better luck next time.
I think you guys wrapped. So we've been going for about 2 hours here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. And I think this is going to do it for God of War Ragnarok. And thank you guys very much.